Chapter 50. 10 days was nothing to Yang Chun, but he had at least a few dozen talismans in his hands. When he was making talismans, no one saw him, so they naturally didn't know that he had made a few talismans for each of the other elements besides the fire element. After being nourished by Yang Chen's universe treasure nurturing technique, these high-level talismans were much more powerful than ordinary talismans. On the 7th day, Shunda came out of seclusion. His face was full of joy, and his eyes were much brighter than before. Under Yang Chen's guidance and the effects of the 3 Qi nourishing pills, he finally broke through the bottleneck of the 4th layer of Qi refinement. Yuan Ting, Hilien, and Gu Kun looked at Shunda with a trace of envy in their eyes. At the same time, they also looked forward to it. Shunda's today might be there tomorrow. The premise was that they could still receive guidance from Yang Chen like Shunda. On the 9th day, the entire Yeshio Manor heard Steward Wang Yuan's excited howl. Following the howl, Wang Yuan's figure appeared in the sky and headed straight for huge Xian. Just like Shangwan Feng, who was halfway through building his foundation, Wang Yuan let out a hearty laugh as soon as he arrived at huge Xian. Junior Martial Brother Yang, your words have helped me reach the 9th layer of the aura refining realm. Yang Chun came out early to welcome him. When he heard Wang Yuan's words, he congratulated him profusely. It's all thanks to Junior Brother. Wang Yuan smiled and cupped his hands at Yang Chun. Then he saw Shunda behind Yang Chun. After a while, he nodded his head and said to Chunda, to be able to improve even further is indeed hard work. Congratulations. It's all thanks to young Master Yang's guidance. Shunda hurriedly bowed. He was a servant, so his identity was different from a disciple. Moreover, Shunda didn't dare to take credit. Oh, Junior Brother Chun, your eyes are like torches. Wang Yuan wasn't surprised at all, as if he had already guessed that Shanghai Feng's foundation building should be related to Yang Chun. It's all thanks to Senior Brother's guidance in the past. I've heard about it from Senior Brother. I thought he looked a little like him, so I just said a few words. Yang Chun spoke modestly, but he transferred all the credit to Wang Yuan himself. After chatting for a while, Wang Yuan said, Junior Brother Yang, I'll have someone send you to the 9 Earth Mountain Villa tomorrow morning. Unfortunately, I'm the manager and can't leave without permission. Otherwise, I'd definitely personally send you there. I don't dare to trouble you, Senior Brother. Yang Chun hurriedly said politely and then said, I have a request. I've been using these servants for the past year and want to bring them to the 9 Earth Mountain Villa. Is it convenient for Senior Apprentice Brother? What's inconvenient about it? Just bring it along. Wang Yuan did not take this seriously at all. Official disciples all had their own servants. Those who were used to working with them would always follow their master. Even if there weren't 10,000, there were at least 8,000. However, he was a bit envious of Shun Da's group of 4's luck. Whether it was the 9 Earth Mountain Villa or the 9 Earth Mountain Villa, they both had servants. Some of the servants' cultivation was even higher than the official disciples. These people were originally disciples, but because their aptitude wasn't enough and their future was dim, they became servants. However, because they had cultivated for a long time, they had also reached the 9th level of Qi refining and even the peak of Qi refining. For official disciples, having servants with higher cultivation than them was a kind of motivation and stimulation, making them work harder in their cultivation. This was also a common method used by all sects and clans. There was nothing special about it. On one hand, it would settle those disciples who failed with insufficient comprehension, and on the other hand, it would teach the new disciples a lesson, killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Since Yang Chun asked for 4 servants, when Yang Chun sent them on their way the next day, other than a servant from the 9 Earth Mountain Villa who led the way, there were 2 men and 2 women behind Yang Chun. Meiqing Mountain had always been the territory of Chunyang Palace. The entire mountain range was about 1,000 li in circumference. The 9 Earth Mountain Villa was the place with the thinnest spiritual qi. 9 Earth Mountain Villa was only about 400 li into Meiqing Mountain Villa. The servant leading the way did not say much and only walked with his head lowered. There was only Yang Chun, who was at the first level of qi refining. He could not fly yet, so he could only walk step by step to 9 Earth Mountain Villa. However, when he reached the second level of chi refining, he could refine a few flight talismans or paper cranes instead of walking. At that time, his speed would be much faster. There were no accidents on the first day's journey. They walked at full speed and only stopped after traveling more than 200 li. Each of them sat down to meditate and recover their chi. After resting for 2 hours, they continued their journey through the night. It was already nighttime and the sky was not very good. The stars in the sky were almost impossible to see. Fortunately, the person leading the way was very familiar and there was only one path to 9 Earth Mountain Villa, so they wouldn't get lost. After walking for another 2 hours, when the sky was about to be slightly bright, Yang Chun suddenly noticed a trace of strangeness. It seemed that the spiritual chi in the surrounding environment was a bit stronger than usual. A normal person would absolutely not notice such a difference, but Yang Chun raised his vigilance. At the same time, he made a careful hand gesture to Shunda and the others behind him. The 4 of them did not doubt it at all and immediately prepared the weapons in their hands. They began to vigilantly observe their surroundings. The servant leading the way in front didn't seem to notice anything and just walked normally. Although he didn't turn his head, he knew what was going on behind him like the back of his hand. The vigilance of Shunda and the others made him very amused and disapproving. This was the territory of Chunyang Palace. Who would dare to cause trouble here? After walking another dozen or so steps, a flash suddenly flashed before everyone's eyes. Each of them discovered that although they were still in the same place, the others had suddenly disappeared without a trace. Because they were prepared, Shunda and the others immediately took out their weapons. However, there was no one in front of them, and they didn't know where the enemy was. Yang Chun stood in the same place and didn't move his feet. He just turned his head and looked left and right. Then, facing a direction, he suddenly said, "Are you waiting for me? A little outer sect disciple. Your senses are quite sharp." In the direction that Yang Chun was facing, suddenly an erratic voice came out. "Someone used all the goods on your body and 10 pounds of low-grade spirit stones to buy your life. When you get to the netherworld, don't make a mistake with your enemy. You're not professional at all." Yang Chun suddenly sneered. "You can't say it like that." "Oh, then how should I say it professionally?" The person hidden in the darkness didn't immediately make a move. Instead, he curiously asked Yang Chun, "I always felt that my words weren't powerful enough. Maybe you can help me change them to sound better. Professional words should be like this." A smile appeared on Yang Chen's face. He took a step forward and said, "Every injustice has its perpetrator, and every debt has its debtor. You and I have no grievances in the past, and there is no hatred in the recent days. Today, I will take your life. If you want to blame someone, blame your greed and your employer. I'm sorry for offending you." Chapter 51. Bang! Following Yang Chen's words, a pyroblast talisman exploded in front of Yang Chun. This was the most powerful fire attribute talisman that Yang Chun could currently create. After being nourished by the universe treasure fostering technique, it exploded with a loud bang. The sound wasn't loud, but it directly enveloped the ground in a radius of a few dozen feet. A figure flashed and disappeared, as if it had been engulfed by the power of the pyroblast talisman. At the same time, there was a cry of alarm and a miserable shriek, as well as the scene of a figure struggling in the sea of fire. "Impossible! How did you know my position?" A horrified voice came out from the sea of fire. It seemed that the person had been seriously injured by Yang Chen's pyroblast talisman, and the voice was full of pain. "Because your lousy, illusory formation can't shake my mind or affect my senses at all." Yang Chun smiled coldly, then suddenly turned around and swung his fist. A figure that had just appeared sneakily behind him was suddenly hit by Yang Chen's fist. It was as if the figure was sitting on a roller coaster, continuously flipping in the air a few times, then heavily fell to the ground. Immediately after, it disappeared from the ground, as if it had suddenly melted into the background. After this blow, the figure in the sea of fire also disappeared in an instant. There were no more miserable shrieks. Apart from the sound of the flames, after the pyroblast talisman exploded, there were no other sounds. Yang Chun wasn't arrogant enough to think that his one punch could end the opponent's life. At least, under his heavy punch, the opponent was still able to quickly escape. This already showed that the opponent's realm was much higher than Shinda's. In Yang Chen's opinion, the opponent was at least at the 6th stage of Qi cultivation. Not coming out, Yang Chen looked around and suddenly asked, "If you don't come out, I'm going to leave." Leave? The hidden person's ethereal voice sounded again, and it was hard to tell where exactly it came from. Why don't you show me?" Yang Chun was too lazy to care about the opponent's contempt. He only took large strides forward, not even looking at his surroundings. The scenery kept changing as Yang Chun strode forward. At this moment, after discovering that Yang Chun was not confused by the previous illusion, the attacker no longer dared to be careless and activated the illusion array with all his might. This was a real formation, unlike He Lian's illusory talisman. Its power was incomparable. Even with Yang Chen's powerful spiritual consciousness, he was only able to avoid being confused by the illusions. Therefore, the 2 consecutive attacks basically did not miss. It was just that the other party had used the convenience of the formation to replace himself with an illusion to escape. In front of Yang Chen's eyes, there was a large sea of fire hell. In the darkness before dawn, the sea of fire illuminated everything around, and the enemy was hidden in the sea of fire, waiting for the opportunity to move. Facing the sea of fire, Yang Chun sneered and stepped forward, stepping into the raging flames. Boom! The violent flames flew up, bringing a scorching aura, sweeping towards Yang Chun. This time, the attack was not an illusion. Instead, it was a real attack that was added to the illusion. However, the sky full of flames came to Yang Chen's side. Suddenly, a white light flashed, a long sound was heard, and a white mist surrounded Yang Chun. It was Yang Chun who launched the frost talisman in time. The cold air emitted by the frost talisman of the water attribute quickly extinguished the flame, and even the power was not reduced. The surrounding ground was also frozen, forming a piece of white frost. In the white frost, a light flashed, and Yang Chen's spiritual consciousness immediately locked onto it. The other party's image disappeared almost instantly, but Yang Chen's hands were not slow. Together with a few improved 15-ton talismans, it directly covered the entire area. 15-ton talismans were the easiest to make for the earth attribute magic power, but the power of Yang Chen's 15-ton talismans was also extraordinary. The enemy hidden in the illusion array relied on the combination of fast and unparalleled movement techniques and illusions to hide themselves and attack the enemy. The 15-ton talismans released by Yang Chun covered a large area. Even if the hidden enemy's movement technique was fast, it was inevitable that he would be affected, and his movement technique would immediately slow down. In just a moment, the enemy immediately mobilized his magic power and broke the influence of the 15-ton talismans. But for Yang Chun, this moment was enough to lock onto him with spiritual consciousness. Whoosh! The other party finally took out a killer move. A yellow light appeared in the scope of Yang Chen's spiritual consciousness, flying towards Yang Chun at a high speed, but there was no sound of wind, only a yellow electric light. Ding! The yellow light directly hit the front of Yang Chun, making a crisp sound. On Yang Chen's body, a faint outline of a set of armor appeared. The yellow light could not penetrate the light and could only return without success. Armor talisman? The hidden enemy almost gnashed his teeth. You're just a first-layer Qi refining disciple. Where did you get so many talismans? In his mind, a first-layer Qi refining disciple plus 5 third-layer Qi refining slaves, as long as they entered his illusion array, it would be impossible for them to escape. Right now, the 5 third-layer Qi refining slaves were indeed trapped in the illusion array, but he thought that the easiest person to deal with was the main character. But now he was in such a difficult situation that even his talisman attack was useless. The yellow light in his hand was originally a talisman sword that he bought at a high price in the marketplace by chance. Its attack speed was extremely fast, but its destructive power was relatively not too strong. But this was already the most powerful attack he could take out, but it was easily blocked by Yang Chen's armor talisman. What kind of armor talisman could be so powerful? This talisman sword was refined by a peak chi refining person, but it could not break the armor talisman used by a first-layer chi refining guy like Yang Chen. It was simply the biggest joke in the world. At the same time that he was surprised, the assassin was also a little afraid. To be able to refine such a powerful armor talisman, he was definitely not an ordinary person. Once he thought that this kid was likely to have some big character supporting him, he felt that this trip was a bit of a waste, and he shouldn't have accepted so few spirit stones. But now the arrow on the bow had to be fired, and he couldn't back out. He could only wait until he ended Yang Chen's life, and then see if he could find a new employer to negotiate the price. Although Yang Chen's armor talisman was powerful, it was not Yang Chen's own power. Once the mana on the talisman disappeared, it would naturally be useless. But a talisman weapon was different. When it was used, it needed to be supported by the user's own mana. The assassin completely believed that he could hold on until the moment Yang Chen could no longer hold on. But the assassin's good plan completely did not expect that Yang Chen's divine sense had already locked onto his position. After blocking the talisman sword's attack, there were already 5 golden on-talismans in Yang Chen's hand. With a wave of his hand, 5 golden lights like sharp swords flew towards the hidden assassin. Chapter 52. The assassin did not expect Yang Chen to have this kind of attack. Although he was surprised, he had no choice but to dodge. The golden on-talisman was an offensive talisman that was similar to the sword aura. Once hit, it was no small matter. The assassin had already discovered from Yang Chen's previous attacks that the power of the talisman in Yang Chen's hands was extremely great. He did not dare to take it head-on. His body flashed, and he wanted to dodge. However, Yang Chen's 5 golden on were very well coordinated. They actually completely sealed off the cliff behind him. In a flash, the assassin could only rush towards Yang Chen's direction. In his haste, he did not realize how Yang Chen's golden on could so accurately locate his position. Yang Chen was waiting for this moment. Taking advantage of the assassin's forward momentum, he also rushed forward. A shocking murderous aura suddenly exploded and collided with a rapidly approaching assassin. Even though he was an assassin, he was frightened to death by Yang Chen's murderous aura. At this moment, it was as if he was suddenly facing a death god from the 18th level of hell. Even his limbs did not listen to his commands for a short period of time. At this moment, even if it was only a blink of an eye, it was enough for Yang Chen, who had already rushed in front of the assassin. As he rushed forward, Yang Chen had already taken out the ghost head saber from his merit ring and swung it in front of the assassin. The ghost head saber slashed across the assassin's neck without any obstruction. Even though the assassin was already at Chi training level 6, even though the assassin did not forget to use Fa Li to protect himself, after Yang Chen deliberately carved a few sharpening talismans on the blade, the ghost head saber had almost been upgraded to a practitioner weapon. Chi, blood shot up into the sky, spurting high into the air from the headless neck. However, Yang Chen had already turned to the side. Not a single drop of blood splashed on his body. From a moment he swung the saber to the moment he withdrew it, it was only a blink of an eye. A dignified Chi training level 6 assassin was already beheaded. Although the assassin was dead, the illusory array did not disappear. Yang Chen was still in the illusory array. Standing in the same place, Yang Chen carefully scanned the surroundings. After confirming that there was only one assassin, he calculated the position and walked to a certain position. Although the effect of this illusory array was good, in the eyes of Yang Chen, it was not a very brilliant thing. With his eyes as a great principal golden immortal, he quickly discovered the location of the eye of the formation. This time, he reversed the yin-yang of the 5 elements according to the principle. At the position of the formation, he began to use the formation of the 5 elements of. Even though Chen was only Chi training level 1, he of Yang of the formation of Yang of, and Yang. He did the formation to the formation was to the 2. To Yang of the formation was Yang Li to say Chen Qiyong, into comma li to of the formation to be. With the loss of the magic power, the formation immediately lost its effect. The scenery in front of him changed and turned into a familiar mountain road. The servant who led the way, Shunda, Gu Kun, Hilian, and Yuan Ting were all standing in the same place, with a vigilant posture. Suddenly seeing everyone, the 5 servants were shocked. Then they saw Yang Chen's figure and the decapitated corpse. Shunda and the other 3 people breathed a sigh of relief. The servant who led the way looked at Yang Chen as if he saw a monster. The situation in front of them almost did not need to be asked. At a glance, they could see that someone wanted to kill Yang Chen in them. However, the assassin was killed by Yang Chen, and at the same time, the illusory array was also broken. The assassin's cosmos bag was still on the waist of the corpse. Under the gaze of the 5 people, Yang Chen untied it, opened it, and looked at it. He picked out a few pieces of jade slips and a few pieces of spirit stones, and then threw the cosmos bag to Hilian, who was the closest to him. Hilian took the cosmos bag in amazement. She had not figured out what was going on. However, Yang Chen had already taken a few pieces of jade slips and checked them with his divine sense. After searching a few pieces, he gave one of them to Hilian. This is the guy's formation and experience in using the illusory array. It will be of some help to you. Take it. In a cosmos bag, there are a few small things for setting up formations. They are yours. As for the rest, the 4 of you can divide it. The servant who led the way was stunned and envious as he watched Yang Chen throw the cosmos bag of a master of the 6th level of the Qi refining realm to his servant as if there was nothing in it. A huge wave was set off in his heart. The servant vaguely recognized the identity of the assassin from a certain mark on the corpse. It seemed that he was a rogue cultivator near Meiqing Mountain. He also had some dealings with the people of Chunyang Palace. He knew the strength of the 6th level of the Qi refining realm. He also knew that the guy had obtained a good practitioner weapon a few years ago. He regarded it as a treasure and was unwilling to show it to others. Without thinking, he knew that the practitioner weapon was definitely in the cosmos bag. Yang Chen didn't even blink and gave the item of a master of the 6th level of the Qi refining realm to the servant. This generosity made the servant's heart ache. Just as he was feeling envious, Yang Chen walked over and handed over the spirit stones he had just taken from the cosmos bag. It's been hard on you to lead the way. This is a small token of my appreciation. The servant hastily received it in fear and trepidation. He suddenly felt strange. Why did he feel this way when facing an outer sect disciple of the 1st level of the Qi refining realm? It was as if his heart was filled with respect. Could it be because he killed the assassin of the 6th level? Or was it because he was generous to his servant? This delay lasted for more than 6 hours, and the sky was already bright. Everyone hastily disposed of the assassin's corpse. After resting for a while, they quickly continued on their way. At the entrance of the 9 Earth Mountain Villa, Sun Haijing was gazing in the direction of the mountain pass. That was the only way to get from the elegant post villa to here. Calculating the time that Yang Chen left, he should have arrived by now. However, the mountain pass was empty without a single person passing by. After waiting for a full 4 hours, there was no movement. Sun Haijing couldn't help but be secretly happy. After waiting for such a long time, Yang Chen still hadn't arrived. He must have been killed on the way. 10 kilograms of low-grade spirit stones for the life of a hateful guy. This deal was really too worth it. Although he was happy, Sun Haijing's face showed an anxious expression. He continuously muttered to himself, "Why isn't he here yet? Why isn't he here yet?" Occasionally, people would pass by and overhear his words. They really thought that he was worried about his new junior brother and was burning with impatience. The longer he waited, the happier Sun Haijing felt. There were already many people who saw his worried appearance and thought about his junior brother. It should be enough. Just when he felt that there was no need to keep pretending to wait, a few figures suddenly appeared from the mountain pass. The one in the middle was the one that he couldn't forget. Even if he died, he wanted to burn his bones and scatter his ashes Yang Chun. Chapter 53. The instant he saw Yang Chen's figure, Sun Haijing's expression was as if he'd been kicked in the face right when he was in the midst of bliss. It was brilliant. Inside Meiqing Mountain, on the road from Ishio Villa to Nine Earth Villa, a wandering cultivator had unexpectedly attacked an outer sect disciple of Chunyang Palace. Moreover, the people involved were a servant of Nine Earth Villa and 4 servants of Ishio Villa. There was almost no need to ask about this matter. This matter would absolutely cause the entire Chunyang Palace to be furious. It could be imagined that all the wandering cultivators within a 1,000-mile radius would absolutely be investigated by Chunyang Palace in a frenzy. Although Sun Haijing had carefully changed his appearance when he came into contact with a 6th-level Qi refining wandering cultivator, with such a targeted target, people would definitely suspect him and Chu Hong. When the time came, once the matter was exposed, Chu Hong would absolutely mercilessly push all the blame onto Sun Haijing. Thinking of this, Sun Haijing felt as if he'd fallen into an icy hole. He never would have thought that a 6th-level Qi refining wandering cultivator wouldn't be able to defeat a 1st-level Qi refining guy. Even if he had 5 3rd-level Qi refining servants by his side, they still wouldn't be a match for a 6th-level Qi refining expert. The difference of 5 levels wasn't just a difference of 3 to 500 kilograms of strength. It was simply the difference between life and death. There was still some distance from a mountain pass to here. Sun Haijing was like a rabbit that had been shot by an arrow as he madly ran back to Nine Earth Villa and reported to Chu Hong. "Calm down. Don't panic." Chu Hong glared at the panicking Sun Haijing and snorted coldly. "That person is already dead. Empty words have no proof. What are you afraid of?" With Chu Heng's reminder, Sun Haijing was finally able to maintain a normal posture. At least after Yang Chun entered Nine Earth Villa, he didn't reveal any flaws. However, the gaze he used to look at Yang Chun was filled with resentment. Everyone could understand this point. What was unexpected was that after this stimulation, Sun Haijing, who had already reached the peak of 3rd-level Qi refining, very quickly went into seclusion and began to break through to the 4th-level Qi refining. Moreover, according to Chu Heng's judgment, it was very likely that Sun Haijing would successfully advance this time. Who dares to attack the disciples of Chunyang Palace in Meiqing Mountain? After getting the news that Yang Chun and his party were attacked, the senior officials of Chunyang Palace began to get angry. Although a few Yuanying stage ancestors did not move, but a few Jidan stage masters had already begun to roar. No matter which sect it was, if their own disciples were attacked by outsiders, they would not have a good temper. Everyone was furious. The law enforcement hall went out, led by a Jidan stage master, and began to investigate frantically within 1,000 miles of Meiqing Mountain. The rogue cultivators within the area all looked as if they had lost their parents. They frowned all day long and faced the anger of Chunyang Palace. That assassin used an illusion array. Du Qian and Yang Chun had long been familiar with each other, and there was no lack of talking and paving the way for Yang Chun in the law enforcement hall. Naturally, the task of finding first-hand information from Yang Chun fell on his head. Now, Yang Chun was sitting opposite Du Qian, and Yang Chen's 4 servants and the leading servant of Nine Earth Mountain Villa were standing aside. In front of Du Qian, there was also a Chinquin bag. Du Qian was looking through the things in the Chinquin bag one by one. The Chinquin bag was the assassin's thing. In addition to the crystal stones, there were many things inside, including the jade slips that Yang Chun took away and the things that Shunda and the other 3 had received. All of them were here. If Du Qian wanted to investigate, he naturally had to find clues from every item. Sitting next to Du Qian was Chu Hong, the disciple of Nine Earth Mountain Villa. This time, he was just listening to the investigation of Du Qian and did not say a word. Looking at Yang Chun, there was always an inexplicable gaze. He used the illusory formation of a practitioner weapon. Even people of the 8th level of Qi refinement higher than him would be confused. "Little brother, how did you get out?" It was really easy for Chunyang Palace to find the identity of a loose cultivator from the foot of the mountain. Du Qian now also knew that guy's identity. At the same time, from the things he left behind, he also discovered his cultivation and how powerful he was. This was also something that Du Qian could not understand. 4 Qi Refinement 3rd level and 1 Qi Refinement 4th level servants were confused, but Yang Chun, an outer sect disciple with the lowest cultivation, Qi Refinement 1st level, was completely unaffected. I am an executioner. My killing intent overflows. Very few things that are charming can shake my mind. Yang Chen smiled and said very casually, if not for this killing intent, I might not have been able to escape. Yang Chen spoke casually, but Shunda and the others did not dare to have such an attitude. Shenda's cultivation was the highest, and he was the first to speak. He recalled the situation at that time. There was indeed a killing intent that filled the sky. I did not expect young master's killing intent. The other servants also confirmed Yang Chen's words. Since Yang Chen was not affected by the illusory formation, it was not impossible for him to kill a Qi Refinement 6th level guy. Moreover, the killer's corpse had already been found. It was a clean cut, obviously the method of an executioner. The killer was also not a body refinement expert. With the neck against the knife, the result was self-evident. Little brother, actually have this move? Not bad. Du Qian's eyes lit up, overflowing with killing intent. He was not affected by the illusory formation. The more he thought about it, the brighter his eyes became, but no one knew what he had thought of. How many people have you killed to condense this kind of killing intent? Aren't you afraid that the heavens will not tolerate it? If Chu Hong had always been biased against Yang Chun, now he already had the intention to kill. Chu Hong would definitely refute words that praised Yang Chun. We, the disciples of Chunyang Palace, do not have murderous stars like you. Junior brother Chu. Du Qian's face immediately darkened, and he said slowly, you want to say that the disciples of the law enforcement hall are all evil? Is that what you mean? Is this your idea alone, Junior brother Chu, or the idea of the entire Bright Moon Palace? Even if Chu Hong had 10 times the courage, he would not dare to speak ill of the law enforcement hall in his own sect. Just now, he only wanted to suppress Yang Chun, but he did not expect to include Du Qian beside him. Senior brother Du. Chu Hong turned pale with fright. If the people of the law enforcement hall knew that it was him who said this, he would probably not have a good ending in this life. He hurriedly explained, I'm talking about Yang Chun. He has killed so many people without cultivating, and his killing intent is probably not a blessing of cultivation. He would not dare to insinuate the law enforcement hall. As long as he does not kill people, what does it matter how many he kills? Du Qian snorted again and did not pursue the matter, but it also made Chu Hong careful, not daring to say anything excessive. Killing intent protective formation, not affected by the illusory formation. Du Qian repeated, and a crazy idea suddenly appeared in his mind. If I let him, an outer sect disciple at the first layer of Qi practitioner, walk the heaven stairway, will make the people from other sects go crazy? Chapter 54. As soon as this thought appeared, Du Qian couldn't hold back his thoughts anymore. He could already see the dumbstruck expressions of a large group of experts. Thinking of this, Du Qian couldn't help but laugh out loud. Chu Hong frowned as he watched Du Qian laugh so presumptuously in front of him. After thinking about it, he decided to endure it. Although their statuses were about the same, Du Qian was currently investigating the attack on Yang Chun. If Du Qian insisted on pursuing him, it wouldn't be good. Junior brother Chu, since little brother Yang has officially become an outer sect disciple, then you don't have to mention anything from before. Du Qian boldly threw down these words. In the future, little brother Yang's cultivation in 9 Earth Mountain Villa will need more pointers. Du Qian's request wasn't excessive at all. Chu Hong was a training disciple, and Yang Chun was an outer sect disciple, so he had the responsibility of teaching. No matter how much Chu Hong disliked Yang Chun, he could only nod. After sending Du Qian off, Chu Heng's expression immediately changed. He faced Yang Chun and snorted coldly. Yang Chun, it's still the same. Since you won against a 3rd-layer disciple, then you will receive the treatment of a 3rd-layer disciple. However, you can try and see if you can find someone else to test you in 9 Earth Mountain Villa. If there's anything you don't understand, feel free to ask me. At this point, Chu Heng's body leaned forward slightly. He didn't even care that Shunda and the other 3 servants were behind Yang Chun, and impudently said, "However, I can't guarantee that the pointers you exchange for with contribution points will be correct." With that, he didn't care about Yang Chen's attitude. He laughed loudly and walked out, minding his own business. With a flash, he disappeared without a trace. Shunda and the others naturally heard Chu Heng's words and looked at Yang Chun with a layer of worry. If Yang Chun couldn't receive personal pointers from training disciple, then wouldn't that mean that many of his cultivation problems couldn't be solved? At least in terms of cultivation speed, he would fall far behind. When Yang Chun heard Chu Heng's words, he really wanted to roll his eyes a few times. I'm a dignified, perfected, golden immortal. Why would I need the guidance of a foundation establishment disciple? Even though he was a veteran, he couldn't help but shake his head and sigh at Chu Heng's clown-like performance. This sigh, when stopped in the ears of the 4 servants behind him, had a different feeling. However, Yang Chen's previous performance still gave them a lot of confidence. Since he could give pointers to Shang Wanfeng and Wang Yuan, maybe the foundation building stage was not a bottleneck at all. All he needed was time. Moreover, with the 1,000-year-old mysterious yang fruit, it seemed like all the problems were no longer problems. In any case, Yang Chen finally entered the 9 Earth Mountain Villa and could be considered to have entered the ranks of the outer sect disciples of Chunyang Palace. He was one step closer to becoming a disciple of his master after reaching the foundation establishment stage. The scripture pavilion of the 9 Earth Mountain Villa stored all the cultivation methods and all sorts of pill refinement and artifact refining methods under foundation establishment. There were even the cultivation experiences left behind by many senior experts. As long as one was a person of Chunyang Palace, whether it was an outer sect disciple or a servant, they could enter the scripture pavilion to read. However, not everyone could enter the scripture pavilion at any time and place to read indefinitely. At this step, all the privileges were related to the sect's contribution points. Only by making a corresponding contribution to the sect would the sect give corresponding treatment. Moreover, not only to read in the scripture pavilion, when asking for guidance from the disciples, contribution points were also needed. Of course, every month, official disciples had a monthly salary, all of which were paid with crystal stones. Servants, on the other hand, did not have such good treatment and only received a small amount of crystal stones. But whether it was official disciples or servants, if they wanted contribution points, they had to work for the sect to get them. There were many things needed for a sect to develop. All kinds of materials needed for alchemy and artifact refining. Even crystal stones could be used to exchange for contribution points with the sect. If money was not convenient, then doing hard labor for the sect, such as taking care of the medicinal garden, helping to control the fire to refine pills, purifying materials, and so on, could all earn contribution points to the sect. Yang Chun had just arrived, so naturally, his contribution points were 0. However, this was not a problem at all for Yang Chun. As long as he entered the 9 Earth Mountain Villa, it meant that he could walk freely within the sect's sphere of influence in Chunyang Palace. He would not be restricted by the Isho Mountain Villa that could not leave the villa. There were also 1 or 2 small-scale markets in the surroundings. Unless it was a particularly rare item, if anyone below the foundation establishment stage needed anything, they could basically exchange in the market. Yang Chun directly used the 1/2 kilogram of low-grade crystal stones that he received in the Isho Mountain Villa to exchange for 10 contribution points. Then, he obtained a right to read in the scripture pavilion for 2 hours. Inside the scripture pavilion, there were only jade slips, not the books of the Isho Mountain Villa. Whether it was an outer sect disciple or a servant, they had already cultivated divine sense and could directly use divine sense to read the jade slips. Jade slips were not only convenient to read, but they could also record a large amount of information. They were many times better than books. Entering the scripture pavilion, Yang Chun began to release his divine sense and looked for what he was looking for one by one. This time, what he was looking for was a jade slip of the basic understanding of alchemy. On this jade slip, The basic concepts of true alchemy and the two most basic recipes were recorded. What Yang Chen needed was this. With this basic understanding of alchemy, Yang Chen could openly learn the art of alchemy. Then, he could openly refine some low-level medicinal pills and exchange them for more sect contribution points. With a large number of sect contribution points, Yang Chen could come into contact with more cultivation methods. His own cultivation would also increase naturally. Yang Chen could not be careless. Each sect valued their own cultivation method inheritance very much. If Yang Chen did not want to be treated as a spy or be killed by people with ulterior motives before becoming a disciple of his master, he had to walk a reasonable cultivation path. For the sake of his master, Yang Chen could endure anything. After an hour of searching, Yang Chen finally found what he wanted. Then, Yang Chen shouted happily in the scripture pavilion. He even alarmed a Foundation establishment disciple who was in charge of the scripture pavilion. After being reprimanded, he was chased out of the scripture pavilion. However, almost everyone knew that Yang Chen had learned the jade slip of the basic understanding of alchemy. Seeing that everything was going according to his script, Yang Chen finally let out a happy laugh in his own room. From now on, everything could finally be on the right path. He no longer had to worry about giving himself away. No matter how extraordinary Yang Chen's performance was, in the eyes of the sect higher-ups, he could only be a genius with great potential to be cultivated. Everyone in the sect should be rejoicing. Chapter 55. A newly promoted outer sect disciple of the Nine Earth Mountain Villa, a guy at the first layer of chi condensation, was actually going to start refining pills. This news spread like wildfire, rapidly spreading throughout the entire Nine Earth Mountain Villa. Yang Chen's great name was also quickly mentioned by everyone. However, when it was mentioned, there were two kinds of emotions. When they heard that when Yang Chen entered the sect, he defeated Sun Haijing, who was at the third layer of chi condensation, everyone's expression was an full of astonishment. But when she heard that Yang Chen was in the first layer of the chi refining stage, he didn't do anything. After going to the scriptures pavilion to learn the alchemy beginner's solution, he was about to open the furnace for alchemy. The corresponding expression and tone quickly turned into chi. If a first layer of chi condensation can refine pills, then what are we, who have cultivated for over 10 or 20 years, doing? Regardless of whether it was official disciples or servants, they all had this kind of thought at the same time. Some even clamor out loud. Everyone couldn't help but treat this matter as a joke. How many famous pill refiners had immersed themselves in the Tao of pills for decades, centuries, or even longer? How could there be this kind of guy who overestimated his own abilities and wanted to refine pills as soon as he came up? Not to mention refining pills, being able to control the fire well and not burn a few ordinary ingredients at the first layer of chi condensation was already an impressive performance. Yang Chen didn't listen to these rumors in the slightest. He only had shunned to make a trip to the market square and buy the cheapest pill furnace and a batch of ordinary ingredients. Even so, this purchase also completely squandered the remaining spirit stones Yang Chen received from the elegant postmanor. Carrying a large pile of ingredients and a pill furnace that couldn't be any more rotten, Yang Chen began his life of refining pills in seclusion. In the entire Nine Earth Mountain Villa, apart from Shunda, Helian, and the other three servants, no one was optimistic about Yang Chen. On the other hand, Shunda and the others had personally witnessed Yang Chen's brilliant performance of easily removing the impurities of a qi-nourishing pill with his fingers, so they were extremely confident in Yang Chen. However, everyone in the Nine Earth Villa, including Shunda and Helian, was curious about what Yang Chen wanted to refine. Regardless of whether it was successful or not, the ingredients Yang Chen was using were all common ingredients that could be bought in a mortal world. At most, they were a bit older, but they were far from being able to provide spirit force. What kind of pill could he refine with these mortal herbs? If they could make that rotten pill cauldron smell a bit of medicine, it would be considered a complete success. This was what 99% of the people in the Nine Earth Mountain Villa thought. Of course, Chu Hung heard this news, but he didn't say anything in front of others. He only sneered in secret and secretly had a close disciple spread the news everywhere. It even reached the inner sect. Thus, an outer sect disciple who didn't want to work hard and had delusions of reaching the heavens in a single step reached the ears of many inner sect disciples. Every disciple who heard this felt extremely disdainful towards this person called Yang Chun. In his own small courtyard, Yang Chun opened up a room to be used as a pill room. After calling He Lian, who had some foundation in pill refining, over to help, he began to refine pills for the first time since his rebirth. The pill recipe Yang Chun chose was not one that people knew of now. Instead, it was a pill called the Qi-seeking pill that would only appear in 300 years. The medicinal ingredients used to concoct this type of pill were all common medicinal ingredients. The resulting pill would not increase the user's spiritual energy, nor would it heal any injuries. Furthermore, it was completely useless to disciples who had entered the first layer of Qi refining. But for those preparatory disciples who had just started cultivating, this pill was a kind of pill that would make them go crazy. The Qi-seeking pill, as the name suggested, was a pill that could find Qi. After taking this pill, an ordinary person's sensitivity to Qi activity would increase by several times. It was an excellent pill that could help one sense Qi. This kind of pill, of course, would not let Yang Chun waste the precious medicinal ingredients in his medicine garden. Medicinal ingredients that were more than 1,000 years old, even the most common medicinal herbs, would have extraordinary medicinal effects. Using the common medicinal ingredients bought in the market square was enough. To He Lian, Yang Chun didn't explain it so clearly. He only warned her to pay attention to her own way of controlling fire. The preparatory work had already been completed by He Lian. Now, He Lian was surrounded by piles of sorted medicinal herbs, waiting for Yang Chun's instructions. After everything was ready, Yang Chun sat on the praying mat on the ground. His hands stroked the ears of the low-grade alchemy furnace in front of him and ignited the flame. Last time he chose the fourth fire cultivation method. Naturally, what emerged from Yang Chun's hands was also the fourth fire. 2 wisps of white flame emerged from Yang Chun's hands and gathered in the center of the alchemy furnace. The 2 wisps of flame were pulled into 2 spiral-shaped filaments in the middle of the alchemy furnace. They spiraled from the edge of the alchemy furnace to the middle of the alchemy furnace. He hadn't even started the alchemy. Just this skill of controlling fire made He Lian, who was staring at him from the opposite side, give out a heartfelt admiration. In just a few days, it seemed that Yang Chun's ability to control fire had gone up a level, becoming more skillful. Because the thin fire filaments were pulled very thin, the heat of the flame could hardly be felt. One could only see a fine spiral inside the alchemy furnace. Who would have thought that it was all composed of flames? Red flower, Yang Chun suddenly shouted. He Lian didn't dare to neglect. She hurriedly threw the already measured red flower into the alchemy furnace. Red ginseng. After throwing the red flower, Yang Chun shouted again. He Lian had already been warned, so she didn't panic at all. She easily threw the red ginseng in. As soon as the 2 medicinal herbs entered the alchemy furnace, they were swept up by the spiral flame and spun along with the flame. After just 2 spins, under He Lian's gaze, they slowly turned into a medicinal liquid. These 2 medicinal herbs were all ordinary medicinal herbs. If one was not careful, they would be burnt. But at this moment, they had turned into a liquid without any signs of being burnt. He Lian sighed in her heart. She had already grabbed another medicinal herb in her hands. She stared at the alchemy furnace, waiting for Yang Chun's instructions. As the medicinal herbs were added in, He Lian finally found an anomaly. Yang Chun seemed to deliberately control the flame into a spiral shape, so that the melted medicinal liquid could rotate along the flame. There seemed to be another way. At least He Lian was very clear that even if she knew all the formulas and dosage, without Yang Chun's unique technique, it would be impossible to refine the elixir in Yang Chun's hands. 2 hours passed quickly. During these 2 hours, the alchemy furnace's heat was controlled at a very mysterious point. This was the key to refining the Qi-seeking elixir. If it was not just right, it would be a waste with no medicinal effect. At this moment, it was time to collect the elixir. Chapter 56. Yang Qin's technique was very special. At least He Lian could not understand it. Perhaps not only He Lian, but probably any alchemy master in the mortal world would not be able to recognize Yang Qin's technique. This technique was learned by Yang Qin from the Laojun elixir scripture. Taishang Laojuan's alchemy level was almost unparalleled. Elixirs of the same quality, refined in the Laojuan's alchemy furnace, would definitely be a few grades higher than others. This was not only because of the alchemy furnace, but a large part of it was due to the Laojuan's unique technique of refining elixirs. There were many methods of refining elixirs, and this was only one of them. It was also the one that Yang Qin felt was the most suitable after thinking about it. Yang Qin had only refined this kind of elixir once in his previous life. At that time, it was to test his own fire control skills. At least he had a little understanding of this qi nourishing elixir. Yang Qin could roughly judge what kind of technique was suitable for qi nourishing elixir. With Yang Qin's gesture, the medicinal liquid that was rotating in the alchemy furnace suddenly began to rotate on its own, breaking into hundreds of fragments. Every fragment was rotating, then slowly turned into a circle, and then slowly condensed. In less than half a moment, it turned into a round elixir. These elixirs seemed to be held by an invisible hand and suspended in the alchemy furnace. Then the flame in Yang Qin's hand disappeared, and these elixirs immediately fell to the bottom of the alchemy furnace and gathered into a pile. Yang Qin smiled and took out the jade bottle that he had prepared long ago and put those qi-seeking elixirs into the jade bottle. Then he and He Lian each held one in their hands and observed it carefully. The refined qi-seeking elixir was round, smooth, and uniform on the surface, and the average size, as if it was rubbed out one by one according to measurements. It was pleasing to look at. Unfortunately, there was no trace of medicinal aura on the elixir. It was neither like some good medicine that emitted a fragrance, nor like some inferior medicine that had a strange smell. This elixir actually did not have a trace of smell, which was really strange. If He Lian hadn't witnessed Yang Qin's success, she would have suspected that he wasn't refining medicine at all. He Lian didn't understand, but Yang Qin knew it very well. There was no smell because all the medicinal energy was contained within the pill, not leaking out at all. In terms of technique alone, this qi-seeking pill was simply perfect and impeccable. It was the first time in his life that Yang Qin had refined it to such a level, and he felt very satisfied. "Young master, what is the use of this medicine?" He Lian asked curiously. She had never heard of such a strange formula and strange technique. She knew that it was a long time before she asked. "It's useless against you and me." Yang Qin smiled and gave an answer that surprised He Lian. Qi refinement realm cultivators are useless? Since they were useless to Yang Qin and He Lian immediately thought of this range. Yang Qin nodded, answering He Lian's conjecture. Seeing Yang Qin nod, He Lian's eyes lit up. Could it be that this is a medicinal pill for Foundation Establishment Realm cultivators? Foundation Establishment Realm cultivators are also useless. Yang Qin then replied. He Lian was even more confused. Qi Refinement Realm cultivators and Foundation Establishment Realm cultivators were not useful. Could it be for Golden Core Realm cultivators? How is this possible? This was only refined with ordinary medicinal herbs. No need to guess. This is for ordinary people, for those preparatory disciples. Yang Qin directly told He Lian the answer. Hearing this answer, He Lian was suddenly a little discouraged. So many medicinal herbs were used only for preparatory disciples. Wasn't this not worth it? No hurry. Take it to the medicinal hall for appraisal. Maybe there will be an unexpected surprise. Yang Qin kept it a secret and didn't say it directly, leaving He Lian guessing for a while. The medicinal hall was responsible for the sale of medicinal herbs in Chunyang Palace. In Jurong Mountain Villa, there was also a courtyard dedicated to the service of Outer Mountain disciples. Generally, if one was willing to spend set contribution points to buy or sell medicinal herbs through the medicinal hall, they could get a discount. And if they refined some medicinal pills and sold it to the medicinal hall, if the medicinal hall was willing to accept it, They could also exchange it for set contribution points. You are Yang Chun? A senior brother in the medicinal hall looked up and down at Yang Chun and frowned. Seeing that Yang Chun nodded and admitted it, he didn't care if he had a friendship with Yang Chun and said earnestly, "Cultivation should be more down to earth. If you want to refine medicinal pills, raise your realm first. Don't waste time, otherwise it won't be good for you." Speaking of which, these words were a little deep, but Yang Chun was very happy. After all, the other party was thinking for him. His good intentions were not something Yang Chun would take lightly. "Thank you, senior brother, for your kind intentions." Yang Chun cupped his hands and thanked him. Then, he took out the jade bottle containing the chi-seeking pill and handed it to the other party. "Senior brother, help me appraise this medicinal pill. How is its effect? What pill is this?" The senior brother took the jade bottle and opened it to take a look. "It looks pretty good. What is its use? When I was in Yesho Mountain Villa, I had the chance to eat a few medicinal herbs. I felt that it was useful for sensing chi, so I tried to refine some. I don't know if it worked or not, so I'll have to trouble the seniors in the medicinal hall to appraise it." Yang Chun casually made up an excuse and covered up the matter of the formula flawlessly. "I'll accept the medicine. Go back and wait for news. It will take at least 2 days to appraise the medicinal pill." The senior brother didn't say much. He had already said it, and Yang Chun had indeed refined something. It wasn't good to say that he didn't do his job properly. He just followed the medicinal hall's rules and let Yang Chun wait. As Yang Chun returned to his courtyard to cultivate and wait, there was another rumor in Nine Earth Mountain Villa. Yang Chun, this guy who didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth, actually took a bottle of medicinal pills refined from common medicinal herbs to the medicinal hall and asked for it to be appraised. Moreover, according to the analysis of a senior in the medicinal hall for a long time, it was completely useless for the chi condensation and foundation establishment stages. This news immediately caused a lot of gossip and ridicule. Shunda and He Lian, even if they were helping Yang Chun run errands in the villa, they were faced with a taunting expression everywhere. Occasionally, there were a few who sympathized with them. It was estimated that they sympathized with their 8 lifetimes of bad luck. They actually followed such an unreliable master like Yang Chun. Everyone was waiting to see Yang Chun make a fool of himself. Everyone also firmly believed that Yang Chun would definitely make a fool of himself this time. The medicinal hall senior was very experienced. He only needed to taste and lick any new medicine, and he would be able to determine its medicinal properties in at most half a day. If he said it was ineffective for the chi condensation and foundation establishment stages, then it definitely was ineffective. However, things that were all refined with ordinary medicinal herbs, could it be prepared for the gold core stage? Just as everyone in Nine Earth Mountain Villa was waiting for Yang Chun to make a fool of himself, the medicinal hall of Nine Earth Mountain Villa welcomed a person who had never appeared here before. The current hall master of Chunyang Palace's medicinal hall, the Golden Core Stage Grand Master Zhu Chintao. Once Zhu Chintao arrived at the medicinal hall of Nine Earth Mountain Villa, he directly pulled the person in charge and hurriedly asked, "Where is Yang Chun? Where is that Yang Chun who refined the chi-seeking pill? Immediately take me to see him." Chapter 57. The hall master of the medicinal hall was a very unusual figure in Chunyang Palace. He had been studying alchemy all his life, and even his cultivation had been delayed. If it weren't for a large number of elixirs, he might not be able to enter the gold core stage. However, since he was an alchemist, such a promotion process seemed normal, relying on alchemy. Zhu Chuntao was studying a difficult problem in alchemy recently in Chunyang Palace. He vaguely heard several disciples of the medicinal hall discussing a new medicine. It was said that it could not be used by cultivators, or it would not work at all after being used, which made him feel very strange. When studying a certain problem, it was appropriate to change your mind. Maybe you could suddenly think of something. Zhu Chuntao was also holding such an idea, so he called the disciple of the medicinal hall over and carefully asked about this thing called chi-seeking pill. What was the point of refining an elixir that could not be used by cultivators? Zhu Chuntao was puzzled, but since the elixir had been sent to be identified, Zhu Chuntao must take a look and see what it was used for. When several disciples of the medicinal hall saw that the hall master came forward, they hurriedly sent the elixir over, and then explained the elixir in its entirety, including that this elixir could not be used by cultivators, and the person who refined it was an outer sect disciple of the first level of qi refining. The moment he got the elixir, Zhu Chuntao could almost be sure that the raw materials of this elixir were 90%. He could judge it just by the color of the elixir. These 90% raw materials were all extremely ordinary medicinal materials, or in other words, they were simply medicinal materials that mortals would use, and there was not a single high-level medicinal material. Zhu Chuntao, who was disappointed, was about to put the qi-seeking pill back, but suddenly found something. This elixir was very rigorous, and there was no trace of medicine smell. Just this alone made Zhu Chuntao feel a little inferior. Although with his identity as a gold core stage alchemy master, using some ordinary medicinal herbs to achieve this was not a difficult thing to do. However, he knew that the little guy who refined the alchemy was only at the first layer of the qi refining stage. This was very commendable. Just looking at the method of collecting the elixir, Zhu Chuntao felt that it was necessary to study this thing called qi-seeking pill. It was impossible for such an ordinary medicinal herb to have much of an effect on Zhu Chuntao. Zhu Chuntao directly picked one and put it into his mouth. Zhu Chuntao had always believed that there was no faster way to appraise the pill than to personally taste it. Once it entered his mouth, the qi-seeking pill seemed to turn into a stream of air, quickly melting and disappearing. After that, there were no more. Zhu Chuntao stared blankly. Could this be the effect of the pill? Since this medicine was called the qi-seeking pill, there must be some meaning behind it. Zhu Chuntao pondered for a moment, as though he had thought of something. He picked up another qi-seeking pill and popped it into his mouth. The pill was still rapidly melting and disappearing in his mouth. But this time, Zhu Chuntao, who was concentrating his senses, keenly discovered that something was different. As soon as the medicinal power entered his mouth, it turned into an extremely weak stream of air that attempted to rush into his meridians. However, it was blocked by his own powerful spiritual power and immediately dissipated without a trace. However, Zhu Qintao's eyes lit up. The feeling of the airflow rushing through his meridians was so familiar. It was just like the feeling he felt when he first started cultivating and tried to sense the flow of qi. Yes, the qi-seeking pill. No wonder it was called the qi-seeking pill. This was simply an elixir that helped those preparatory disciples find the sense of qi in the simplest way. Was it useless for cultivators? Zhu Qintao didn't think so. As the hall master of the medicine hall, he naturally looked at the problem from a more comprehensive perspective than those ordinary disciples. He considered the interests of Chunyang Palace more. No matter how powerful a sect was, it was always composed of disciples, from the lowest preparatory disciples to the outer sect disciples, to the inner sect disciples, and even to the pro-disciples. The status of each level was higher than the previous one. However, the lowest preparatory disciples had always been the foundation of all sections. The development potential of a sect was not decided by the most powerful person in the sect, but by the lowest level preparatory disciples. Zhu Qintao was an experienced person. Of course, he knew how difficult it was for the preparatory disciples to find the sense of qi and complete a qi circulation at the beginning. If there was this qi-seeking pill at that time, Zhu Qintao could be sure that the time for him to become an outer sect disciple could be shortened by at least half. If the time for each preparatory disciple to reach the first level of qi refining could be shortened by half, it meant that there would be at least several times more outer sect disciples than now. A huge number of disciples also meant that the number of people who could become inner sect disciples would increase greatly. The more disciples there were, the greater the potential of the sect. After thinking about this, Zhu Chuntao took this bottle of qi-seeking pill directly to see the palace master. As the palace master, his view on this issue was naturally more sensitive, and his eyes immediately lit up. This disciple must be rewarded heavily. The palace master directly decided his attitude towards Yang Chun. Also, This chi-seeking pill is listed as a secret of our Chunyang Palace. Except for you and me, the disciples, especially the disciples of your medicine hall, must not easily disclose the secret of this chi-seeking pill to outsiders. With this chi-seeking pill, within 100 years, our Chunyang Palace can definitely grow several times stronger. Speaking of this, even the palace master with Yuani in cultivation could not help but tremble. However, an outer sect disciple who was at the first level of chi refining was not worthy of the palace master's appearance. Therefore, the medicine hall master, Zhu Chuntao, volunteered to find Yang Chun. In this, there's a little selfishness of Zhu Chuntao. After tasting it himself, he basically knew what kind of medicinal materials were used in the chi-seeking pill. However, even if he, the alchemy master, used the same medicinal materials, he could not completely refine the chi-seeking pill. Strictly speaking, he did not even manage to refine a single chi-seeking pill. Even though the refined items looked similar, there was no effect at all. This made Zhu Chuntao very discouraged, but at the same time, he also became abnormally excited. The medicinal materials could not be wrong, so the only thing that could be wrong was the use of medicinal materials and the special refining method. And the most likely was the refining method. At the thought that this was probably a method that Zhu Chuntao had never heard of, Zhu Chuntao had an urge to see Yang Chun immediately and watch him refine the pill. As a result, the Nine Earth Mountain Villa was shocked to find that the legendary figure of the Pure Yang Palace, the hall master of the medicinal hall, the Jidan alchemist Zhu Chuntao, hurriedly rushed to the Nine Earth Mountain Villa and began to clamor to see Yang Chun. Chapter 58. With the arrival of a golden core grandmaster, the entire Nine Earth Mountain Villa was thrown into chaos. Who would have thought that a golden core grandmaster would come to the villa, and that he wanted to see an outer sect disciple who had just joined the Nine Earth Mountain Villa? As a teaching disciple, Chu Hong could be considered half a manager of the Nine Earth Mountain Villa. He was already respectfully waiting not far away. Hearing that Zhu Chuntao wanted to see Yang Chun, even though he was already at the foundation establishment stage, his heart couldn't help but tremble. What reason could make a golden core stage alchemy grandmaster so anxious to see an outer sect disciple? Although he had doubts in his heart, Chu Hong didn't dare to express a trace of dissatisfaction on his face. He quickly ordered a disciple to find Yang Chun and have him come over immediately. What a joke! A golden core grandmaster couldn't possibly lower himself to see an outer sect disciple, right? Yang Chun was cultivating regularly. His life during this period of time was very peaceful. In the eyes of outsiders, Yang Chun was only punctually meditating and cultivating for one cycle every day. Afterwards, he would have nothing to do in the villa and look around. No one knew what he was looking at. Sometimes, he would use the hard-earned sect contribution points to exchange for time to read in the scripture pavilion, squandering all the sect contribution points. In the eyes of countless people, only meditating and cultivating for one cycle every day was already lazy to the extreme. There was no outer sect disciple lazier than him. Coupled with Chu Heng's intentional or unintentional attitude, besides Yang Chen's 4 servants, no one else would pay attention to him. Even Sun Haijing, who had just come out of seclusion, didn't have the same hatred towards Yang Chun as before. First, his cultivation had advanced, and his state of mind seemed to be a bit more open. Second, arguing with such a mischievous person would be beneath his status. The lazier Yang Chun appeared, the less of a threat he would be in the future. No one knew that although Yang Chun only did one cycle every time, in reality, it was a full cycle of the yin-yang 5 elements arts. Moreover, before each cycle, Yang Chun always ate a piece of the profound yang fruit. The 1,000-year profound yang fruit's flesh contained a spirit power so powerful that it made people drool. With Yang Chen's yin-yang 5 elements arts complementing each other, it was enough to send Yang Chen's cultivation directly to the second level of qi refining within one cycle. Even so, the enormous medicinal power was still unable to be completely absorbed. But Yang Chun would never be satisfied with this kind of spiritual power skyrocketing realm improvement, followed by a reversal of the 5 elements. It would quickly offset the skyrocketing spiritual power in the body, leaving only the purest part of the essence that even the 5 elements could not completely offset. This yin and yang 5 elements restrained each other, but it made Yang Qin's cultivation base return to the first layer of qi refining. After this positive and negative yin and yang 5 element cycle, the spiritual power in Yang Qin's body was improving at a uniform rate every day. However, Yang Qin knew that this kind of improvement was all the essence of the essence. He did not even have to worry about reaching the peak of qi refining in order to build his foundation. He had to purify the impure spiritual power in his body again. Countless people were stuck at the peak of qi refining. It was precisely because in order to speed up the breakthrough to the peak of qi refining, they used a variety of methods to increase their spiritual power. This led to the spiritual power in the body being sufficient, but the quality was far from enough. But Yang Qin did not have such a problem at all. Of course, Yang Qin's external performance was that of fire attribute spiritual power. Naturally, Yang Qin would focus on the performance of fire attribute spiritual power. After thoroughly digesting the profound yang fruit's medicinal power, Yang Qin would always control the 4th fire attribute spiritual power to deliberately reflect it, giving people a feeling of fire surrounding the body. For Yang Qin, one complete cycle of cultivation every day was already enough. Naturally, if it didn't use the profound yang fruit, the amount of spiritual power he absorbed during cultivation was almost negligible. Yang Qin naturally wouldn't waste that kind of effort. In the eyes of outsiders, he would become a mischievous person. Blindly bitter cultivation is not the right path. Shinda and the others were naturally confused. Before, Yang Qin was not this kind of lazy person. How come he seemed to be a completely different person after arriving at the 9-Earth Mountain Villa? Regarding this, Yang Qin explained it like this. If bitter cultivation is effective, then why does the sect encourage disciples to go out on patrol, refine pills, forge weapons, and even do odd jobs in the sect in exchange for sect contribution points? Isn't it just to let the disciples relax and relax when cultivating? Shinda, Helian, and the others were also influenced by Yang Qin. They only cultivated 9 cycles a day. This was the limit Yang Qin told them. The rest of the time, apart from serving Yang Qin, was to do odd jobs everywhere in the 9-Earth Mountain Villa in exchange for sect contribution points. Yang Qin and his servants also became a very special few in the 9-Earth Mountain Villa. Zhu Qintao wanted to find Yang Qin. Naturally, there were disciples who immediately called Yang Qin over. It just so happened that Yang Qin was strolling around at this time. When he heard the summons, he hurried over. From far away, Yang Qin felt an unusual aura. It faintly revealed a monarch-like aura. Discovering this aura, Yang Qin's heart moved, but there was no abnormality on his face. He quickly followed the disciple, leading the way to the medicine hall. Zhu Qintao did not deliberately completely restrain his aura. He just let it be released naturally. Despite this, the aura of a golden core grandmaster still made people involuntarily have an urge to worship. The disciples serving here all didn't dare to breathe loudly at this moment. They looked at Zhu Qintao in the middle, full of respect. Yang Qin, why haven't you paid your respects to Martial Granduncle? Xu Heng's rebuke came from far away. Yang Qin didn't dare to be neglectful. He respectfully bowed to Zhu Qintao from far away. Before he could speak, Zhu Qintao's figure had already appeared in front of him. He picked up Yang Qin and asked loudly, "You are Yang Qin? Did you refine this qi-seeking pill?" "Yes, Martial Granduncle." Yang Qin knew in his previous life that Zhu Qintao was a fan of alchemy. His qi-seeking pill was precisely to attract the attention of the medicine hall. He originally planned to refine some higher-level pills to attract Zhu Qintao's attention, but he didn't expect Zhu Qintao to come so quickly. "Refine it for me to see." Zhu Qintao didn't say anything and directly let Yang Qin start refining the pill. When the people next to him heard Zhu Qintao's instructions, they were all stunned. A golden core grandmaster was so impatient. It was unbelievable. Here, Yang Chun was startled and then smiled. Martial granduncle, there are too many people here, and it is not suitable to calm down and refine pills. Otherwise, let's change places. As he spoke, he glanced at Chu Hong with a smile. Obviously, the person he was talking about was Chu Hong. Chapter 59. Let's go to your pill refining room. Zhu Chenao didn't say anything else and immediately got up to leave. With his movement, how could the others still dare to stand? They all hurriedly stood up. The supervisor of the 9 Earth Mountain Villa's medicine hall immediately became anxious. He stepped forward and said hurriedly, "Martial uncle, since it's pill refining, isn't it more appropriate to do it in the medicine hall? Besides, everyone also wants to observe Junior Brother Yang's pill refining techniques." It would have been better if he didn't say this reason. Once he said this, Zhu Chuntao immediately remembered the palace master's instructions. The qi-seeking pill was very important to the sect and couldn't be known by just anyone. Hearing the medicine hall supervisor's words, he directly waved his hand. "Do you have the medicinal ingredients that Yangchen uses here? Or do you have a pill furnace that he can use?" With these two sentences, everyone could naturally hear that Hall Master Zhu didn't want to watch Yangchen refine pills here at all. They could only bitterly follow behind Zhu Chuntao, planning to go see what kind of good pills Yangchen had refined. Seeing this situation, Zhu Chuntao frowned. "What? Do you all have nothing to do every day? Go busy yourselves with your own things? If you really have nothing to do, then go cultivate. Don't be lazy." With a few words of reprimand, even if everyone was stupid, they knew that Zhu Chuntao didn't want anyone to follow. At this time, the gazes that they looked at Yang Chun almost carried an emotion of extreme jealousy. This was the medicine hall's golden core grandmaster. If he was happy and casually gave a few pointers, that would be a lifetime of benefits. Unfortunately, they were not fated. Seeing this, Chu Hong didn't know what to think in his heart. He hurriedly waved at everyone and loudly instructed, "Go busy yourselves, go busy yourselves. Martial uncle, let this disciple accompany you over. What are you going to do? You're not a fire cultivator, and you don't know how to refine pills. What are you going to do?" Zhu Qintao didn't care whether Chu Hong was an inner sect disciple or a training disciple. He directly retorted, "Is it that you're very carefree as a training disciple and have nothing to do every day?" Facing Zhu Qintao's rebuke, how could Chu Hong dare to say half a word? He hurriedly bowed and left. But when he glanced at Yang Chun, his eyes were filled with unspeakable hatred. Zhu Chuntao happened to see this glance, and he was immediately very dissatisfied. "What are you looking at? What? Are you jealous that an outer sect disciple knows alchemy? Why are the disciples of the Bright Moon Hall becoming more and more useless?" These words were extremely heavy. How could Chu Hong dare to stay where he was? He didn't even dare to casually look and quickly fled. Even so, Zhu Chuntao still seemed to be a little unwilling to let him go. He shouted loudly behind him, "People who cultivate the Tao place the most importance on cultivating the mind and temperament. Your temperament still needs to be tempered." The guidance of a golden core stage grandmaster, who knows how many people look forward to such a day, but Chu Hong could not be happy no matter what. Zhu Qintao's words just now were clearly heard by the entire 9 Earth Mountain Villa. He had lost a great deal of face now. In the future, he would be looked down upon by the 9 Earth Mountain Villa's disciples. All of this was naturally counted by Chu Hong on Yang Chen's head. Yang Chen didn't care what Chu Hong thought, since he had already attracted Zhu Qintao's attention. He was happy to make himself even more important. After respectfully inviting Zhu Chuntao into his small courtyard, he immediately ordered He Lian to prepare the things. Shunda, Yuan Ting, and Gu Kun continuously waited on the surroundings, afraid that there would be anything lacking. Only a few people were allowed to stay in the simple and crude alchemy room. Even if the other people of 9 Earth Mountain Villa were extremely curious, they didn't dare to peep in front of a golden core stage grandmaster. He Lian was already so nervous that her body was trembling. Following her master, in a short period of a month, she actually saw a golden core stage grandmaster. In the past, this kind of thing was unimaginable. At this moment, a golden core stage grandmaster was sitting in front of her. Everything was like a dream. Although she was nervous, Hylian's basic skills were still not bad. In a short while, she had already prepared all the materials that Yang Chun used to refine pills last time. She even measured the weight. Then, she took out Yang Chen's pill refining furnace from her chinquin bag and placed it in front of Yang Chun. This is the pill refining furnace you used. Looking at this extremely simple pill refining furnace, Zhu Qintao's face couldn't help but reveal a look of surprise. Relying on this kind of pill refining furnace, he could refine the qi-seeking pill. What did this mean? Could it be that Chunyang Palace would soon have another pill refining genius? However, the surprise on Zhu Qintao's face only flashed. What he wanted to know the most was Yang Chen's pill refining technique. He had already seen the herbs, and there was no difference from his analysis. There was only a slight difference in the dosage, but this difference was not enough to make Zhu Qintao unable to make the qi-seeking pill. The only thing that could explain the problem was Yang Chen's pill refining technique. In the face of a golden core stage grandmaster, Yang Chen couldn't help but become serious. He sat in the same place, holding the two handles of the pill refining furnace with both hands, and began to practice. Everyone's eyes suddenly lit up. There were already two flames in Yang Chen's hands. At first glance, Zhu Chuntao could conclude that Yang Chen's was just an ordinary flame of the five elements. There was no unique fire seed. It was normal to think about it. It would be strange if an outer sect disciple at the first level of qi refining had any strange fire seed on him. There were no traces of strange flames on the qi-seeking pill. It was obviously an ordinary fire. However, the scene of Yang Chen's next control of the flame directly made Zhu Qintao's eyes stare out. When the double helix thin flame began to rotate, he had already concentrated on the flame in the alchemy furnace, and his eyes refused to blink. The herbs were added one by one, melted, then rotated, and then slowly mixed evenly. Finally, under the control of Yang Chen's unique flame, it was directly broken into small pieces of uniform size. Then Zhu Chantao watched Yang Chen use a seemingly very ordinary pill refining technique to collect the medicinal pills that had been formed and put them into a jade bottle. From the beginning to the end, Zhu Chintao stared at Yang Chen's technique. He was fully focused and did not wander at all. He was completely observing and analyzing Yang Chen's technique until Yang Chen's alchemy ended. Taking the jade bottle that Yang Chen had put away, Zhu Qintao pinched a qi-seeking pill and sent it into his mouth. Suddenly, a cyclone that wanted to invade the meridians flashed away. Yes, this was the real qi-seeking pill. Everything happened in front of Zhu Qintao's eyes, and he couldn't have any doubts. There were no unique herbs, no mysterious alchemy furnace, and even no unique pill refining technique. The only thing that was different was Yang Chen's method of controlling the fire. That technique, even in the eyes of Zhu Chuntao, a golden core stage master, was enough to be described as superb. Chapter 60. You. Pointing to Yang Chen, Zhu Chuntao said the word you twice, and it seemed that he still couldn't think of how to ask. This was the first time that Zhu Chuntao had such a feeling when facing an outer sect disciple. Yang Chen's spiritual power was very poor, and Zhu Chuntao did not expect him, a disciple in the first layer of the qi refining stage, to be strong. However, just talking about the means of controlling the fire, even if it was Zhu Chuntao, he couldn't do it when he was in the first layer of the qi refining stage. Although he could barely do it with his cultivation base in the Jidan stage, he couldn't do it as easily as Yang Chen. It must be known that Yang Chen had almost stretched the two small flames that he could control to the extreme. In the eyes of a master like Zhu Chuntao, the thinnest flame was almost as thin as silk. Even if it was Zhu Chuntao, it was very difficult to do it, not to mention that there was no slightest mistake in the process of alchemy. As an alchemy grandmaster, after Zhu Chuntao saw the complete alchemy process, he had understood most of the principles of this qi-seeking pill. It was nothing more than sealing the spiral-shaped flame in the pill. The moment the pill was eaten, the spiral-shaped aura would erupt, giving people a feeling of being strengthened by an external force. This would allow those new cultivators to find this trace of feeling and quickly enter the state. This chi-seeking pill, the most important thing was that the two spiral-shaped flames could not have the slightest intersection. The thinner the distance, the closer the medicinal effect was, the better the effect. Once the two flames accidentally intersect, it would destroy the spiral-shaped aura, and this furnace of pills would be considered wasted. What shocked Zhu Qintao was that even if he understood all the principles and saw the complete process, if he really wanted to refine such a furnace of chi-seeking pill himself, he couldn't guarantee that he would succeed every time. However, Yang Chun, in the face of the pressure of a Jidon stage master, still had to divide his attention to controlling the fire for alchemy, but he did it so easily. At this point, even Zhu Qintao was ashamed. After thinking about this, Zhu Qintao suddenly felt a little ashamed. He was an alchemy master of the Jidon stage. He didn't know how many times more experienced than Yang Chun, but in the face of such a furnace of ordinary medicinal materials, using the worst alchemy furnace to refine medicinal pills, he was actually not as good as a disciple of the first layer of the Qi refining stage. How did he bear this? Where did you learn this method of controlling the fire? Finally, Zhu Qintao stabilized his mind, found the focus, and then asked this question. He wanted to know what kind of person could point out Yang Chun, a freak who could make him feel ashamed of his inferiority in controlling the fire. When I was in the Xiu Manor, the Shangwan of the Shangwan Yang Chun had long thought of an excuse. In the face of Zhu Qintao's inquiry, he did not panic at all. He spoke with confidence and assurance. He said that I have a fire spirit root. In the future, whether it is cultivation or fighting, alchemy or refining, is inseparable from the fire. He said that I must be able to control. I listened to the words of the Shangwan Yang. After I entered the first layer of the Qi refining stage, I especially practiced controlling the fire for more than half a year. After you completed your Qi circulation, you practiced controlling the fire for more than half a year? Zhu Qintao was stunned. He had heard of Yang Chen's experience. After this disciple joined the Chunyang Palace's Xiu Manor, in just a year and a half, he had reached the standard of the outer sect disciple of the first layer of the Qi refining stage. This speed could already be considered as a person with excellent comprehension. He didn't expect that he actually practiced controlling the fire for more than half a year. In other words, Yang Chun reached the first layer of the Qi refining stage in less than a year. The four servants, including Shunda, were also stunned, but this also eliminated one of the doubts in their hearts. When Yang Chun was in seclusion in the Xiu Manor, it was always the four servants who served him. They had long noticed that when Yang Chun was in seclusion, there was a fluctuation of spiritual power. At that time, they didn't say anything, so they were very puzzled. Now, they finally understood that Yang Chun had already completed his Qi circulation and was practicing controlling the fire. Compared to Zhu Qintao's shock, the hearts of Shunda and the four servants were even more shocked. The big shots were high up and didn't know that there were so many twists and turns in Yang Chen's cultivation. But they knew. If the time Yang Chun used to practice calligraphy and lay the foundation was deducted, then from the beginning of Yang Chen's cultivation to the first layer of the Qi refining stage, it only took a short half a year. Even in the whole of Chunyang Palace, as far as Shunda and the others knew, it was an unprecedented achievement. Just because of Shangwan Feng's words, you fumbled in practice to this point? Seeing that Yang Chun nodded his head and admitted it, Zhu Qintao's heart was now only left with shock and surprise. What was different from the shock of Shunda and the others was that he was shocked by Yang Chen's comprehension of cultivation. The achievements of a person's cultivation, in addition to his own innate root bone, which was the attribute of the spiritual root, depended on his own comprehension, hard work, and the degree of external help. Even if a person's spiritual root was full value, if he didn't have the comprehension, he couldn't even understand, let alone cultivate. Without the slightest external help, Yang Chun could practice controlling the fire to this point only by the guidance of Shangwan Feng, the new disciple of Zhuji's stage. If Zhu Qintao were to find a suitable word to describe it, perhaps he could only be described as a madman. Zhu Qintao suddenly had an impulse. Such a talented disciple. He must let the palace master know. In front of him, the outer mountain disciple, who could speak with confidence and composure in the face of the pressure of a Jidon stage master, and did not panic when refining medicine, was definitely the most potential genius disciple recruited by Chunyang Palace in the past 100 years. If such a disciple was not carefully cultivated, it would definitely be the biggest loss of Chunyang Palace. How about this, Yang Chun? I don't treat you as an outer mountain disciple, and you don't treat me as a martial uncle. Let's put aside our identities and simply discuss the means of controlling the fire. What do you think? The more he looked at Yang Chun, the more Zhu Qintao liked him. He suddenly had the idea of accepting him as a disciple, but he knew that it was impossible now. It was still possible to simply give pointers, but he didn't want to see Yang Chun take a detour. As soon as Zhu Qintao said this, Shunda, Hilian, Yuan Ting, and Gu Kun were all shocked. Who was Zhu Qintao? For the four servants, he was simply a legendary existence. Even if he was an outer mountain disciple, he was a martial uncle who had a kowtow when he saw him. What was he saying? Put aside our identities? Discuss it? My God, a Jidon stage master and a disciple at the first level of Qi refining realm. Discuss it equally? Did they hear it wrong? Or was the world crazy? How dare I trouble martial uncle? Yang Chun didn't seem to understand the meaning of this at all. His mouth was polite, but he immediately said another sentence. There are some things I don't understand, and I hope martial uncle can give me some advice. Chapter 61. On one hand, he didn't regard himself as an outsider, and on the other hand, he seized the opportunity to ask for guidance. Yang Chun and Zhu Qintao immediately stared at each other like tortoises and mung beans. However, this scene was witnessed by Yang Chen's four servants. They didn't know how many times they smacked their jaws on the ground in secret. Martial granduncle, I have been pondering alone, and I don't have any special methods. Whatever I see, I just think of using flames to create it. In the face of Zhu Qintao, Yang Chun was really not polite at all. He straightforwardly raised the question. It's just that sometimes it's only possible to be similar in appearance, but not in spirit. I don't know what the reason is. Master Uncle, please take a look. As he said that, two balls of flames appeared on Yang Chen's hands again. Then, the two balls of flames started a series of dazzling performances. Without a sound, the two balls of flames seemed to fuse together, turning into a fire stick that ran through both of Yang Chen's hands. It was long and round, but had the same thickness. The red flames surged within the stick, but none of them were able to escape the range of the stick. Immediately after, the flames turned into a square. The flames flowed smoothly on the surface. If one didn't pay attention, they might really think that it was a real thing and not an illusory flame. Then, the shape of the flames became more and more complicated. A treasured sword made of flames, a ghost headblade made of flames, even a table made of flames, a book, a jade slip, and even a burning candle. Shunda and the other three were stunned speechless, especially He Lian and Gu Kun. They looked at the burning candle. The candle below didn't move at all, as if it was a real thing. However, the flames on the wick were still swaying slightly. Coupled with the red color, it was very lifelike. This change wasn't over yet. In the blink of an eye, the flames started to transform into a tree. Apart from the color, the tree trunk and leaves looked as if they were carved out of red jade. It was so realistic that even the folds on the bark could be seen clearly. If one were to take a closer look, one would even notice that every leaf, including the veins, was clearly visible. Zhu Qintao was worthy of being a Jidon stage master. His powerful spiritual awareness did not miss even the most subtle part of the flame in Yang Chen's hand. When he found that the leaves were so clear, he couldn't help but be shocked. How could such a method be considered as controlling fire? It was simply using fire to create a world. The flame on Yang Chen's hand was still changing. After maintaining the tree for a period of time, it suddenly dissipated and turned into a house in the blink of an eye. This house was exactly the same as the alchemy room that Yang Chun was currently in. Zhu Chuntao even used his divine sense to scan the place and found that even the bricks and tiles corresponded to each other. It was just that they were a lot smaller. The following changes made Zhu Chuntao even more dazzled. The house suddenly shrank, and then many things appeared around it. Yang Chen's small courtyard appeared between Yang Chen's hands, as if it had shrunk many times. After everyone saw everything clearly, the small courtyard shrank again. Then everyone saw a corner of the 9 Earth Mountain Villa, with dozens of small courtyards. With everyone's eyesight and divine sense, they could still see it clearly. After stabilizing for a period of time, the corner of the mountain villa shrank again, and then the entire miniature 9 Earth Mountain Villa appeared in front of everyone. The 9 Earth Mountain Villa was almost several dozen li in circumference, but at this moment it was completely displayed between Yang Chen's hands. What was miraculous was that if everyone used their divine sense to scan, they could find that every brick, every tile, every stone, and every tree of the 9 Earth Mountain Villa could be found in the small area between Yang Chen's hands. Seeing this, the Jidan stage master Zhu Chuntao plus Yang Chen's 4 servants Shunda, Hilian, Yuan Ting, and Gu Kun were completely stunned. What was this? This was a flame? Using flames to construct an illusory 9 Earth Mountain Villa. Could there be a situation more unbelievable than this? There was no need to mention Shunda and the other 3. From the moment the increasingly complicated shapes formed by the flames had appeared, they had completely turned into idiots. Other than opening their mouths wide and maintaining a dumbstruck expression, they did not make any other movements. Even with Zhu Qintao's boasting of his Jidan stage cultivation, having several hundred years of experience in the area of pill refinement and controlling fire, he still didn't dare pat his chest and boast that he could do what Yang Chen did. What was even more unbelievable was that all of this was done by a first-level Qi condensation outer sect disciple. His cultivation was lower than any of the people present, including the servants, but he had done a miracle that no one could believe their eyes. Yes, apart from miracle, the 5 people couldn't think of any words to describe what they saw. If this kind of scene appeared on a Yuanying stage master, perhaps it wouldn't be strange, but it just had to appear on the hands of a first-level Qi condensation outer sect disciple. After the 9 Earth Mountain Villa scene continued for a while, it suddenly dissipated. All of the scenery once again turned into 2 small and trembling flames, swaying on Yang Chen's hands and returning to its original appearance. Without Yang Chen saying much, everyone understood how Yang Chen did all of this. First, he used the flames to simulate simple shapes, like a long square, then more complex shapes, then more and more complex, until finally he could evolve into the entire 9 Earth Mountain Villa. The shapes that Yang Chen displayed one by one were the trajectories that he practiced. There was simply no need to ask. Was there still any doubt about such a superb method? At least in the eyes of Shunda, Hilian, Yuan Ting, and Gu Kun, it was already a perfect performance. They couldn't see any problems at all. A Golden Core Grandmaster was a Golden Core Grandmaster after all. Zhu Chuntao seemed to think of something and began to slowly ponder with a frown. But how could he find an answer in such a short amount of time? Just recovering from the shock was already not bad. Martial uncle, you also saw that I could do this. Yang Chen's words sounded at the right time and gathered everyone's attention. Zhu Qintao's spirit was even more shaken. Maybe what Yang Chen found difficult was something he hadn't thought of at the moment. Although my flames can simulate complex shapes, there's one thing I can't do. Yang Chen's question finally came out. I can only simulate things that can't move, but I can't create things that can move. Martial uncle, do you have any way to solve this? Once Yang Chen's question came out, Zhu Qintao suddenly froze. His ears seemed to be shaken by a great bell, and his eyes immediately lit up. Then he sighed heavily. Yang Chen, compared to your imperial fire, I found that my hundreds of years of cultivation have all gone to waste. Chapter 62. The words of a Jidan stage master directly made Shunda, Hilian, Yuan Ting, and Gu Kun fall into a complete sluggish state. If a Jidan stage master, moreover a fire attribute Jidan stage master, said that his hundreds of years of cultivation in controlling fire were all in vain, then what were they? even worse than a dog. Hearing this, Yang Chen's face showed a trace of a bitter smile. He attracted Zhu Qintao's attention in order to hide himself under a layer of protection in Xunyang Palace, and also to make everyone pay more attention to him, but not to let Zhu Qintao evaluate him like this. Once this sentence was heard by people outside, it was unknown how much trouble it would cause. The cultivation world was not entirely composed of good people. It was unknown how many people were jealous of the virtuous and capable, including Chu Hong. He was in Xunyang Palace, but he was on good terms with the pro-disciple of the Taishaman, and even fawned on him. How good was his heart? Furthermore, it wasn't like everyone was so calm and peaceful among the sections. The cultivation resources in this world were not so abundant that all cultivators could squander. This also meant that there must be fights between sections. And once a talented disciple appeared in some sects, if they did not pay attention to protection, it was estimated that they would die suddenly for unknown reasons. Once Zhu Qintao's evaluation of him spread outside, Yang Chen estimated that even if he stayed in the Nine Earth Mountain Villa every day and did not go out, he might still be plotted against. After all, he was now only at the first level of qi refining. At best, he could only overturn mediocre people like Shun De or Sun Haijing, who were at the fourth level of qi refining. If a master appeared again, he would definitely not be able to bear the consequences. Even if he could kill the killer who blocked the way last time, it was because the other party underestimated him and did not expect that he would have that murderous move. If the other party really wanted to deal with Yang Chen with all his strength from the beginning, Yang Chen would have died long ago. No one spoke, and the scene was silent for a long time. Zhu Qintao seemed to recover from that kind of sigh. Seeing Yang Chen's face, he immediately realized what kind of trouble his words might bring. Without thinking about it, his face immediately sank. You four, you didn't hear anything just now. You didn't see anything. You've been serving the two of us outside, right? As soon as these words came out, the four servants were all quick-witted people. After being servants for a few years, if they didn't even have this little insight, then they would have worked for nothing. They all swore loudly with their inner demons, and then they no longer dared to stay around the two and left. When only Yang Chen and Zhu Qintao were left, Zhu Qintao said excitedly, "So fire can also be played with like this. How did you think of it?" Of course, Yang Chen would not tell him that this was what he learned from the hands of countless important people in the heavenly court in the next 10,000 years, and also from a group of people like the Fire Lord and even the 28 constellations who specialized in playing with fire. He just smiled and said, "I also don't know how to cultivate. Chief Steward Shangwan said to train to control fire, so I used this method to train to control fire. I still don't know if it's right or not, but since Marshal Granduncle said so, it seems like it's not wrong." Wrong? Zhu Qintao glared at Yang Chen and suddenly laughed. I originally thought that I would only be able to fool around in the Aurus Core stage for the rest of my life. But after your demonstration, I saw the hope of nascent soul. I'm not your Marshal Granduncle. You are my Marshal Granduncle. In a happy mood, Zhu Qintao's words were already very out of tune. The sudden surprise, even if he was a Jidon Grandmaster, he could not help but be shocked by this discovery. It was not like the demeanor that a Grandmaster should have. When talking to Yang Chen, he also began to speak indiscriminately. Seeing that Yang Chen had been smiling bitterly, Zhu Qintao patted Yang Chen's shoulder very casually and comforted him. "Don't worry. Now only I and the Palace Master know about your matter. Others don't know. Your qi-seeking pill will be the secret weapon of my Chunyang Palace in the future. No matter how many you refine, the palace will collect how many. Don't worry, if you want crystal stones, we will give you crystal stones. If you want contribution, we will give you contribution. In addition, the question you said, how to make the fire simulate living things, I don't know how to answer you for a while." Zhu Qintao did not proudly forget the question raised by Yang Chen. "According to my experience, there are two possibilities. One is that your current spiritual power cultivation is not enough. The other is that your divine awareness is not enough. You practice like this first. After I go back and think about it for a while, I will tell you." "Thank you, Grandmaster." Yang Chen nodded secretly in his heart. In fact, what Zhu Qintao said was exactly his current problem. Zhu Chuntao was worthy of playing with fire for hundreds of years. Even with experience alone, he could see some things. Although it was not the most critical part, he believed that after Zhu Chuntao went back and studied it, he would also find out the mystery. Many things were like a layer of window paper. As long as it was pierced, there would be no secrets. However, Zhu Chuntao said that everything was confidential, which made him feel relieved. As long as he was not a genius in cultivation and only had a reputation for alchemy, the treatment could be completely different. No one would like to offend an alchemist, even in the demonic path. For those who might save their lives and help them improve their cultivation in the future, most people in the cultivation world would still flatter them. Who knew if one day they would come to ask for help? What are you thanking me for? I should thank you. Zhu Chuntao waved his hand and did not put on his grandmaster's airs. After saying that, he frowned and said, "However, how do I thank you?" "Well, how about this? I will accept you as my disciple and directly become my personal disciple. How about it?" These words made Yang Chen stunned. He did not expect Zhu Chuntao to suddenly give him such a big gift. There were many benefits to becoming Zhu Chuntao's personal disciple. If it was given to anyone in the Nine Earth Mountain Villa, it would be a good thing to reach the sky in a single bound. However, the problem was that Yang Chen's first wish after his rebirth was to become a disciple of his beautiful master. "Grandmaster, this is against the rules. You can't break the rules of Chunyang Palace just for me." Yang Chen hurriedly found an excuse. However, he immediately thought that this might just be a delay. Maybe it was a problem that he would still have to face after reaching the foundation establishment stage. He could only say very honestly. In addition, this disciple also wants to learn something other than alchemy in Chunyang Palace. This was a tactful refusal. With Zhu Chuntao's hundreds of years of experience, how could he not hear it? He did not force it. After all, a Jindan stage master could still be more open-minded. He chuckled and said, "If that's the case, then I will owe you a favor. When you need it, you can come to me." In addition, as he spoke, Zhu Chuntao took out an alchemy furnace from his Chinkoan bag and put it in front of Yang Chen. "Your alchemy furnace is too bad. This is for you." Chapter 63. This is something I bought from an auction by chance when I was traveling outside. Although it is a low-grade alchemy furnace, it can just bring your fire control method to the extreme. Zhu Chuntao was very satisfied to look at the alchemy furnace he took out and said, "I already have a top-grade alchemy furnace. You can just use this to improve your alchemy technique. Thank you for the great gift of Master Uncle. It would be impolite for this disciple to refuse." Yang Chen saw this alchemy furnace at a glance. His face immediately showed a smile. He did not refuse and directly thanked him. Zhu Chuntao saw that he accepted it easily, and he was also very happy. Compared with the direction he found for the Yuanying stage cultivation, a low-grade alchemy furnace that he could not use was a bit too insignificant. Fortunately, he also promised Yang Chen a favor, which made him feel better in his heart. The thing about the chi-seeking pill must not let other people know, especially the refining method. Finally, Zhu Chuntao still told Yang Chen something before he left. He just saw Yang Chen's superb fire control method, and now he was anxious to go back to experiment and ponder. He could stay until now. It was already a lot of face. When Zhu Chuntao had disappeared, Yang Chen's face showed a smile as if he had found a treasure. He carefully held the alchemy furnace left by Zhu Chuntao in his hand and began to look up and down. The more he looked carefully, the more the smile on his face. Helian quietly walked in and saw that Yang Chen was holding the alchemy furnace happily. She did not dare to disturb him and quietly retreated. The alchemy furnace left by a Jidan stage master could definitely make a chi-refining first-layer fire cultivator very excited. Yang Chen's performance was reasonable. No one knew that Yang Chen was excited because he found a coveted alchemy furnace. The alchemy furnace in front of him, whether from the appearance or color, was very similar to an alchemy furnace he had heard of in his previous life. And that alchemy furnace was said to be found in the human world. The profound spirit furnace, in his previous life in the heavenly court, was also a great alchemy furnace. It could almost be said to be ranked in the top 10. almost all the elixirs that Yang Chun had heard of, the profound spirit furnace, could be refined. This point, it was estimated that apart from the Grand Supreme Elderly Lord's 8 trigrams furnace, it was absolutely unique. Even the famous alchemy furnaces that were ranked higher than the profound spirit furnace have their own restrictions. A few elixirs could not be refined, but the profound spirit furnace had no such restrictions at all. The reason for this was a characteristic of the profound spirit furnace. This profound spirit furnace was not a top alchemy furnace from the beginning, but a furnace embryo. After thousands of years of refining and looking for various kinds of fire seeds, it became a top alchemy furnace. To put it bluntly, this profound spirit furnace was an alchemy furnace that could be upgraded, but the things needed for the upgrade were more special. In addition to some special materials suitable for the alchemy furnace, the profound spirit furnace also needed to absorb various kinds of fire seeds to upgrade. Now in the hands of Yang Chun, it was likely that the furnace embryo had not yet been discovered by the alchemy master in his previous life. This profound spirit furnace was also refined by a master, but it was only half refined. Because there were no better materials in hand, even he himself did not know whether his idea was feasible or not. So after refining a furnace embryo, he gave up. But even so, the performance of this profound spirit furnace was also a low-grade alchemy furnace. Holding it in his hand, Yang Chun scanned it several times with spiritual awareness and input of spiritual power. It looked like the profound spirit furnace. Suddenly, Yang Chun couldn't believe that he would have such good luck and get such a legendary alchemy furnace. Thinking of this, Yang Chun's hands began to tremble a little, as if a huge pie fell from the sky and directly knocked him out. But Yang Chun also understood that this profound spirit furnace, at the beginning, in the hands of anyone who did not know the goods, it was just a low-grade alchemy furnace. Who would be willing to use the top materials to throw into a low-grade alchemy furnace? Who would be willing to use precious fire seeds to throw into a low-grade alchemy furnace? Needless to say, others, the Jidan stage master Zhu Qintao, didn't he take the profound spirit furnace as a waste and directly threw it to Yang Chun? Anyway, whether it was or not, as long as Yang Chun had the opportunity to refine it with top materials, or what kind of precious fire seeds were collected, it would naturally be seen. Although he could not be 100% sure, Yang Chun had already had 80% confidence from the performance of this alchemy furnace. In any case, this was also a low-grade alchemy furnace. Compared with the unranked alchemy furnace in Yang Chun's hands, it was not known how many times it was stronger. Even if it was a low-grade alchemy furnace, it could be classified as a magic weapon. If Yang Chun only had the strength of the first layer of the Qi refining stage, he could not even control the magic weapon. He could only use some rune weapons. However, thanks to Yang Chun's spiritual awareness that was already comparable to the middle stage of the foundation stage, at least Yang Chun was now able to completely collect the profound spirit furnace, mark it with his own spiritual awareness mark, and completely turn it into his own thing. He had already got the profound spirit furnace in his hands. If Yang Chun could still let it become someone else's thing, then he was really a fool. Therefore, without hesitation, Yang Chun began to collect the profound spirit furnace. The powerful spiritual awareness directly wrapped the profound spirit furnace and began to engrave his own spiritual awareness mark in the core of the alchemy furnace. Although Yang Chun's spiritual awareness was already strong enough, but in the case where his spiritual power was still very low, it still took Yang Chun a whole day to do these things. None of Shen Da's 4 people dared to disturb him. They also knew that Yang Chun must be trying to refine the alchemy furnace. Although they knew that the hope was slim, none of them dared to say anything. They just had some doubts in their hearts. They were all depressed, waiting for Yang Chun to come out. After spending a day and a night, Yang Chun finally completed the collection of the profound spirit furnace. When the spiritual awareness completely engraved his own mark in the profound spirit furnace, Yang Chun could not even believe that he already had one of the top 10 alchemy furnaces of the future heavenly court. With a satisfied smile, Yang Chun happily walked out of the alchemy room. He couldn't help but be happy. Even when he was a great principal golden immortal in his previous life, there was no such level of magic weapon in his hands. At the door, Shunda, Helian, Yuan Ting, and Gu Kun, two on each side, lined up neatly waiting for Yang Chen to come out. When they saw him coming out, they were all happy, and at the same time, they were also looking forward to it. Yang Chen did not talk nonsense. He knew what they wanted. He smiled and said directly, "The alchemy furnace is good. By the way, the few of you, no matter what attribute, you can practice the Imperial 5 Elements technique in my way. Moreover, it is very good for practicing spiritual awareness." Chapter 64. Shunda and the other three were overjoyed. They were waiting here to ask if other methods similar to Yang Chen could be used in addition to the fire cultivation. Although they all had a little idea in their hearts, they were still very happy to get a positive answer. Several people immediately determined their future direction of cultivation. After a simple rest, Yang Chen immediately called He Lian to the alchemy room. Now Yang Chen's cultivation base was still low. It was impossible for a person to control the fire and add medicine to the alchemy, so he could only ask He Lian to help. However, this also gave He Lian the opportunity to observe, which He Lian couldn't ask for. With the newly collected profound spirit furnace, Yang Chen had to use this pill furnace to refine a furnace of chi-seeking pills to try the pill furnace. Since it has been decided to use this profound spirit furnace for the rest of his life, Yang Chen certainly has to start taking good care of it. The best way to maintain the pill furnace, in addition to refining with better materials and looking for fire seeds to absorb, was to add more medicinal qi to the profound spirit furnace. How to increase the medicinal qi? A lot of alchemy was the answer. No matter what kind of medicinal pill it was always necessary to use a variety of medicinal materials. The more medicinal materials were refined, the more medicinal qi left by various medicinal materials would be, and the pill furnace could more and more balance the medicinal qi of various attributes, thus achieving the purpose of warming the pill furnace. Magic weapon? When He Lian saw Yang Chen take out the pill furnace, and then the original palm-sized pill furnace suddenly became a pill furnace with a height of half a person, she immediately recognized that this was a magic weapon, and her envious eyes did not hide it. Cultivate well, you will have a chance to have it in the future. Yang Chen smiled and said nothing more. He just motioned He Lian to start preparing medicinal materials. With such a big pill furnace, it could naturally refine more pills in one go. Yang Chen let He Lian choose 10 times the amount of medicine, and then held the ears of the pill furnace and began to control the flame. No way. The cultivation base was too low, and he couldn't directly use his spiritual awareness to control the flame and the pill furnace at the same time. He could only hold it with both hands. As soon as the flame appeared, Yang Chen felt the strength of the profound spirit furnace. Even if the profound spirit furnace was only a low-grade magic weapon now, it was still a magic weapon after all. Compared with Yang Chen's original worst alchemy furnace, it was simply heaven and earth. Whether it was the control of the flame or the amount of the flame, using the profound spirit furnace was several times better than the original alchemy furnace. Even Yang Chen had a feeling that this alchemy furnace and himself had a kind of flesh and blood connection, and it could know what he wanted to do. One by one, the herbs were added in, and in the blink of an eye, they were transformed into medicinal liquid. After that, the medicinal liquid began to condense along the spiral structure of the flame. Everything was the same as the original concoction process. The only difference was that the amount of medicinal liquid had increased by 10 times. However, Yang Chen did not seem to be straining at all. 2 hours later, a total of 1,000 chi-seeking pills were collected by Yang Chen using the pill collecting technique. The whole process was very smooth. Yang Chen did not delay time. He didn't have a good way to get the sect contribution before. Now that Zhu Chunao had left a word, he could exchange it for crystal stones or contribution points. Yang Chen directly took the newly refined medicinal pill and went straight to the medicinal hall of the Nine Earth Villa, and then let all the medicinal hall disciples exchange it for the sect contribution points. Zhu Chuntao was very generous, and it may also be related to the attention of the palace master. Originally, 1 or 2 low-grade spirit stones could be exchanged for a contribution point. Now, Zhu Chuntao directly let Yang Chun exchange a qi-seeking pill for a contribution point. It must be known that the qi-seeking pill was refined with ordinary medicinal materials, and the cost was negligible. 1,000 contribution points. Yang Chun did not waste any of them. All of them were handed over to the Scriptures Pavilion in exchange for reading time in the Scriptures Pavilion. In the following days, apart from performing 1 cycle of cultivation at a fixed time every day, Yang Chun always stayed in the Scriptures Pavilion. In the previous life, Yang Chun's cultivation of fire attribute methods was already unparalleled in this world. However, Yang Chun did not have a deep understanding of the other attributes. He only had a general understanding during battle, and it had nothing to do with cultivation. Yang Chun could not master one method, and could only first look for help from the sect's ancient records. Although the Scriptures Pavilion of the Nine Earth Villa was only prepared for Qi condensation disciples, it had a large number of ancient records. Just the various methods suitable for this period, there were no less than several hundred types. Adding on the experience and lessons of countless predecessors, just the ancient records on cultivation already numbered close to 10,000 jade slips. If one also counted the various classifications such as pill refining, tool refining, talisman techniques, formation knowledge, and so on, just the Scriptures Pavilion of the Nine Earth Villa of the Chunyang Palace had no less than 100,000 jade slips. Generally, after Qi condensation disciples entered the Scriptures Pavilion, they would look for the things they needed according to the different categories. Usually, they would find a suitable method, then find the corresponding cultivation experience and lessons for this method, and then they would give up. To be like Yang Chun, carefully studying every single jade slip was simply unprecedented. Countless people looked at Yang Chun's stupidity and shook their heads in silence. Many people took joy in his misfortune, but not many people warned Yang Chun. They seemed to be waiting to see him make a fool of himself. Chu Heng naturally knew of Yang Chun's actions in the Scriptures Pavilion and almost instantly determined Yang Chun's goal. Yang Chun definitely did not want to ask this disciple about cultivation, so he wanted to go to the Scriptures Pavilion to find the answer. Chu Heng sneered in his heart. Without someone to teach him step by step, did he really think that cultivation was so simple? However, Yang Chun's behavior also made Chu Heng completely put down his guard. A disciple of the first level of Qi condensation, staying in the Scriptures Pavilion every day instead of cultivating, how much future could he have? There was no need to suppress him at all. He read so many messy ancient books. Naturally, he would cripple himself. A first level of Qi condensation wanted to specialize in many things. Who did Yang Chun think he was? A gene dance stage master? Yang Chun did not care about everyone's opinion. Every day, he eagerly looked at the ancient books of these predecessors. With his experience as a great principal golden immortal, he could naturally distinguish which was right and which was wrong. Soon, he had a more intuitive understanding of the other 5 elements. All day in the Scriptures Pavilion, the contribution to the sect was not enough. Yang Chun went to refine a furnace of Qi-seeking pills, which was enough for him to stay in the Scriptures Pavilion for a few days. This kind of life lasted for half a year, and the jade slips in the Scriptures Pavilion, Yang Chun had also read most of them. Just as Yang Chun put a piece of jade slip on the original shelf and reached for the next piece of jade slip, a faint sigh suddenly came behind him. Junior brother Yang, it's useless for you to look like this. Chapter 65. There were many disciples going in and out of the Sutras depository. There were hundreds of them every day. Many people sometimes wanted to see Yang Chun's obsessive look. They would often appear around Yang Chun. Yang Chun had also developed a habit. He did not guard against the people who came to him. Anyway, those who could enter the Sutras depository were all disciples and servants of Chunyang Palace. They were not allowed to use force here. He did not pay attention to others, and others would not look for him. Therefore, Yang Chun did not pay attention to who appeared around him. He just scanned the jade slips with his divine sense one by one. This sudden voice made Yang Chen's movements stagnate, as if it evoked a warm memory from the bottom of his heart. In his previous life, when Yang Chen was in Zhurong Villa, there was such a voice that cared about him. However, after his rebirth, Yang Chen had poured all his thoughts on his master and forgot the initial warm feeling. Turning back, Yang Chen saw the owner of the voice. It was almost exactly the same as in Yang Chen's memory. The fitted dress, the carefully trimmed hem of the skirt, the eyes looking at him calmly, a peerless face, like a fairy in the myth, standing behind Yang Chen like a dream. Senior sister Gong-sun. After Yang Chen called out, he suddenly did not know what to say and was silent in the same place. Junior brother Yang, if you look at it like this, it will be impure and it will easily interfere with your cultivation. Gong Sunling looked at the junior brother who had been hearing his name recently and kindly advised him. At this moment, Yang Chen's mind had run back to his previous life, recalling every bit of Gong Sunling. Every sect would have some talented disciples. There was no doubt that Gong Sunling was one of those talented disciples. However, the world of cultivation was very cruel. Under the fierce competition, many talented disciples would fall for various reasons. This was why Yang Chen did not want Zhu Chuntao to publicize himself. In his previous life, Gong Sunling was one of the talented disciples who fell. However, she did not fall because of others, but because she failed to ascend and turned into ashes. In Yang Chen's memory, Gong Sunling's impression was far less clear than Shi Shanshan and Sun Qingxue. This was also because she fell early in the mortal world. But in Yang Chen's previous cultivation, senior sister Gong Sunling still gave him a lot of advice. At that time, Yang Chen was just an ordinary disciple, and Gong Sunling was a pro-disciple. Even when Yang Chen was in danger again, Gong Sunling also saved Yang Chen once. Yang Chen's warm feeling in the sect, in addition to his master, at least half of it was because of Gong Sunling. Although the things of that year had not happened yet, since Yang Chen had seen Gong Sunling, he naturally could not let the tragedy of that year repeat itself. Gong Sunling had a good spirit root of the earth attribute. As for how good it was, Yang Chen did not know. But Yang Chen remembered that Gong Sunling became an outer sect disciple in a year, reached the foundation stage within 10 years, and then stepped into the ranks of the Jidan stage in less than 80 years. After that, she entered the Yuanying stage in more than 100 years, and entered the Deshang stage in only 500 years. Until the time of the Ascension Tribulation, Gong Sunling only spent less than 1,000 years. At that time, Yang Chen had just entered the middle Jidan stage. Even Yang Lan's framing of him had not happened yet. Now that he thought about it, Gong Sunling's aptitude was not inferior to Shi Shanshan and Sun Qingxue. Even Yang Chen had begun to doubt whether Gong Sunling had a full spirit root of the earth attribute. Junior brother Yang. Junior brother Yang. Gong Sunling saw that Yang Chen just stared at her and didn't speak, and couldn't help but be a little angry. Many people were obsessed with her beauty. Gong Sunling was very clear, but she kindly reminded Yang Chen, but it attracted such a rude gaze, and she was really unhappy in her heart. But he always felt that since they were from the same sect, it was better to remind him. So he resisted his unhappiness and called Yang Chen twice. Sorry, senior sister Gong-sun, I thought of something else and lost my mind. Yang Chen was called by Gong Sunling and woke up. With Yang Chen's temperament, it was not a memory that could make him moved. Otherwise, he would never fall into such a state of absent-mindedness. Perhaps, in the depths of Yang Chen's heart, there was also a place for Gong Sunling. Yang Chen replied respectfully, and he did not hide his absent-mindedness, which made Gong Sunling feel a little better, and her voice calmed down a lot. She pointed to Yang Chen and said, Junior brother Yang, you have seen so much. It is not good for your cultivation. Thank you for your concern, senior sister. Yang Chen hurriedly thanked her. Anyone could distinguish between good and bad at this time. Gong Sunling didn't say much. When she saw Yang Chen thank her, she was not polite. She turned around and left, leaving only a sentence. You are on your own. Looking at Gong Sunling's graceful departing figure, Yang Chen seemed to be infatuated and stayed in place for a long time without moving. In the following days, Yang Chun didn't restrain himself because of Gong Suanling's reminder. He still read all the jade slips one by one as he pleased. After spending another 2 months, he finally finished reading all the jade slips in the scripture pavilion. In his previous life, Yang Chun cultivated hard every day just to reach foundation establishment as soon as possible. When he entered the scripture pavilion, it was to find a fire attribute cultivation method. How could he be as leisurely as this life, reading all the jade slips in the scripture pavilion? 100,000 jade slips, reading an average of 500 per day, also took Yang Chun more than 200 days. During these days, Yang Chun also unknowingly gained the nickname of a bookworm. Almost all the people in the 9 Earth Mountain Villa also knew that there was a number 1 character like Yang Chun. In addition to the 3rd fire and 4th fire cultivation methods, the other 1st wood, 2nd wood, 5th earth, 6th earth, 7th metal, 8th metal, 9th metal, 9th water, and 10th water cultivation methods, Yang Chun had already changed all of them. They were replaced with 8 more effective cultivation methods. Previously, in order to collect the Yin-Yang 5-element secret art, there was no way to only collect the cultivation methods first. He didn't consider too much about the effects. Now, he finally found a more suitable cultivation method. The effect was immediate. The Yin-Yang 5-element secret art was now running, and it felt a lot smoother than the previous cultivation methods. Of course, there was the reason for the cultivation method. Yang Chun's understanding of the other attribute cultivation methods had improved a lot. After reading so many jade slips, even if it was only the qi refining stage of perception of the 5 elements, it also benefited Yang Chun a lot. Combined with Yang Chun's understanding of the fire attribute, Yang Chun now had a lot more understanding of the 5-element secret art. The rest was no longer something that could be obtained by reading books. He could only rely on his own perception. After all, what was recorded in the books was only the things of others. What Yang Chun had to do was to make others' things his own. The bookworm Yang Chun actually came out of the scripture pavilion and didn't go back in again. It immediately became big news and spread throughout the entire 9 Earth Mountain Villa. Chapter 66. Every day, those who looked at Yang Chun were a group of people who were watching a show, looking at a clown's performance with ridiculing gazes. Everywhere Yang Chun went, there were these kinds of gazes. Even if there were a few that didn't have this kind of ridiculing intent, they all carried some regret or confusion. In the entire 9 Earth Mountain Villa, no one knew what he was doing. Yang Chun didn't pay any attention to this. He only followed his usual habits. Apart from performing 1 cycle of cultivation each day, he sat in his small courtyard and carefully pondered and digested the things he had obtained from the enormous scripture pavilion's library. Perhaps it was because the knowledge of his previous life was too focused on fire cultivation, but when Yang Chun settled his heart and focused on all aspects, even if it was only the experience and knowledge of the qi condensation stage, it was still an eye-opener for Yang Chun. His understanding of the Yin-Yang 5-element arts went up another level. After Yang Chun pondered in this half-closed-door cultivation for more than a month, he saw Sun Haijing as soon as he came out. Sun Haijing's face clearly had an expression of taking pleasure in Yang Chun's misfortune. He looked at Yang Chun as if he was looking at a dead person. "Junior brother Yang, congratulations." Sun Haijing looked at Yang Chun with a fake smile. Master said that since junior brother Yang has enjoyed the treatment of the 3rd level of qi condensation, according to the rules, junior brother Yang can go out and gain experience. Senior brother Sun is considerate. Yang Chun didn't pay attention to Sun Haijing's words at all and only retorted, "I can go out and gain experience. It's not necessary." Senior brother Sun is perhaps thinking too much? Sun Haijing sneered as if he had long known that Yang Chun would say this. After 2 sinister laughs, he said, "It seems that not going out is no good. Junior brother Yang, there is an order from above for junior brother Yang to immediately go out and gain experience." Hee, junior brother Yang, congratulations, a fierce tiger leaving the mountain, a dragon entering the sea, a grand plan. Yang Chun's brows furrowed. The upper echelons of Chunyang Palace wanted him to go out and gain experience. What was going on? Could this have been arranged by Chu Hong? After thinking about it, Yang Chun shook his head. Chu Hong is not bold enough to make such an arrangement. Moreover, it must be arranged by someone at least at the level of hall leader or palace lord in Chunyang Palace. What does it mean? Sun Haijing looked at the expression on Yang Chen's face, and his heart felt as comfortable as if he had eaten an iced watermelon in the hottest days of summer. Yang Chun really had no good way to deal with him in the Nine Earth Mountain Villa. However, as long as Yang Chun left Meiqing Mountain and left the sphere of influence of Chunyang Palace, then Yang Chun would not be able to be arrogant. After carefully appreciating it for a while, Sun Haijing left with a satisfied expression. Before leaving, he did not forget to ridicule Yang Kai, saying in a very regretful tone, "Junior brother Yang, I originally planned to wait until the day of the sect's grand competition to issue a life or death challenge to you. Junior brother Yang is so powerful. Surely he wouldn't be afraid of me being a few layers higher than him. It's a pity that the talisman weapons and talisman treasures that I've carefully prepared can't be used anymore." What a pity. Talisman weapons and talisman treasures? Yang Chen laughed coldly. Senior brother Sun has probably forgotten how many sect contribution points I need to read in the scripture pavilion. If these sect contribution points were converted into Jingshi, how much would it be? Senior brother Sun, if I come back alive, I will definitely challenge Senior brother Sun during the sect's grand competition. Sun Haijing's face clearly showed a wave of exasperation. Yang Chun reached out to his neck and lightly released a wave of killing intent. He said with a cold smile, "At that time, Senior brother Sun, wash your neck clean and wait. I will use countless talisman weapons and talisman treasures I've bought to smash you to death." This kind of person was constantly scheming against him in the sect. Yang Chun had already made up his mind to kill Sun Haijing. He definitely would not let Sun Haijing live. Stimulated by Yang Chen's killing intent, Sun Haijing shivered. His face instantly became pale, and his body involuntarily retreated a few steps. He almost tripped over the door-sill of the courtyard behind him. His body staggered a few times before he managed to steady himself. At that moment, his ears were filled with the echoes of Yang Chen's voice filled with killing intent. It was as if his soul was trembling. Perhaps he felt that his performance just now was too embarrassing. After Sun Haijing steadied himself, he took a few deep breaths. His face finally regained some color, but he was still extremely afraid. He forcefully tried to put on a calm expression, but the muscles on his face involuntarily trembled, unable to be stabilized. In the end, he forcefully suppressed his fear. However, it had already been a long while. Yang Chun even no longer paid attention to him, and had already stepped into his room. In the end, Sun Haijing seemed to want to redeem his face and shouted guiltily at Yang Chun, "Wait until you come back alive before we talk." After hastily escaping from Yang Chen's small courtyard and returning to his own room, Sun Haijing was still covered in cold sweat. His panicked mind was unable to calm down for a long time. His hands involuntarily trembled as he muttered, "Don't come back! Don't come back!" He was already terrified. Sun Haijing could get the news. Yang Chun could be sure that it must have been from Chu Hong. However, he didn't know what the sect meant by sending a disciple of the first level of qi condensation out to gain experience. However, Yang Chun wasn't in a hurry. He believed that someone would come to notify him very quickly. As expected, after half an hour, someone came to notify Yang Chun and brought him to the main hall of the Nine Earth Mountain Villa. Here, Yang Chun unexpectedly saw Du Qian, who hadn't appeared for a long time. In addition, Chu Hong was also present. What was even more surprising was that Gong Sunling was also present. Yang Chun, if you want to succeed in your cultivation, you can't just shut yourself in. The one who spoke was Chu Hong. He had the appearance of a teacher who guided him patiently and patiently. It just so happens that the new period of experience has already begun. This time, you'll also be included. This is something the sect has specially arranged for you, so you can't refuse. Yang Chun looked suspiciously at Du Qian. Du Qian naturally knew of Yang Chen's suspicions, but he smiled and nodded without saying anything. Du Qian presumably wouldn't harm him. Yang Chun believed that this definitely wasn't something Chu Hong could arrange. Yes, Yang Chun agreed and didn't say anything else. On the other hand, Gong Sunling looked curiously at Yang Chun the entire time. She seemed to be wondering why Yang Chun, a disciple of the first level of qi condensation, was being sent out to gain experience. However, even if she didn't understand, Yang Chun was even more confused. This arrangement was truly a bit unexpected. He really didn't know what the higher-ups were thinking. Go back and pack up. We'll leave right away. Chu Hung spoke again and reminded, Yang Chun, you're the disciple I think highly of. Don't make any mistakes on the road. His words were righteous, but Yang Chun clearly understood the meaning within. After you leave, be careful. Du Qian warned amiably from the side, then waved his hand. Go prepare. We'll leave afternoon. You have to reach the floating mountain before the 20th of the 7th month. As he spoke, he handed over a talisman. If there's any danger on the road, activate this talisman. Your senior sister Gongsun will arrive in time to save you. Chapter 67. Originally, Yang Chun had some doubts about the higher-ups wanting him to go out and gain experience, but after hearing about floating in the sky, he immediately dispelled those doubts. So they wanted him to participate in the floating mountain heavenly stairway assembly for new disciples. No wonder they wanted him to go out. After thinking about it carefully, Yang Chun immediately thought of the reason. Maybe it was because he accidentally said that he wasn't afraid of illusions when he killed that assassin last time. This made the higher-ups want to gain back some face for Chunyang Palace. This wasn't a big deal, but it gave Yang Chun a great opportunity. He originally thought he would have to stay in 9 Earth Mountain Villa for at least 3 years before leaving. He didn't think it would be so easy. After casually tidying up his luggage, Yang Chun went to the main hall of the mountain villa and said goodbye to Chu Hung and Du Qian. He directly set foot on his first trip out to gain experience after joining Chunyang Palace's outer sect disciples. Gong Sunling was no longer there. She had probably left a long time ago. Yang Chun was a bit glad that Du Qian and the others didn't want him and Gong Sunling to go together. Otherwise, there would be a lot of trouble. Shenda, He Lian, Yuan Ting, and Gu Kun, the 4 servants, weren't allowed to leave. They had the status of servants. Before reaching the 6th level of qi refining, they couldn't have the opportunity to go out and gain experience. Being alone and free. The moment Yang Chun stepped out of 9 Earth Mountain Villa, he suddenly felt like a fish in the sea and a bird in the sky. Because of the importance of the higher-ups, Yang Chun would always refine a cauldron of qi-seeking pills and give them to the medicinal hall every 5 or 6 days. Previously, he used to exchange them for sect contribution points. Later on, he changed them all into low-grade crystal stones. Now, Yang Chun had at least 200 to 300 kilograms of low-grade crystal stones. Yang Chun's first stop after leaving 9 Earth Mountain Villa was the market square at the foot of Meiqing Mountain. Since he was going out, Yang Chun naturally had to prepare a few things to use on the road. Moreover, a vile person like Sun Haijing definitely wouldn't give up this opportunity to kill him for no reason. He would definitely set up a killing trap outside. Yang Chun also needed to buy enough things in the market square to defend himself. Although Yang Chun wouldn't be afraid, no matter how many people of Sun Haijing's level came, Yang Chun was still only at the first layer of qi refining. If a few more high-level enemies came, Yang Chun would still have to suffer a grievance. Yang Chun now had plenty of spar in his hands. As long as he took a fancy to something in the market square, he would haggle a little and then buy it. He was very generous. He stayed in the market for 3 consecutive days, until Yang Chun could no longer feel the spiritual awareness that was secretly peeping at him. Then he left the market and flew in the other direction of Meiqing Mountain. Under Yang Chun's body was a paper crane. This was a talisman weapon. Jia's entire body was made up of talismans and had been strengthened by a foundation establishment expert. As long as the user continued to inject spiritual energy into the paper crane, they would be able to make it fly. Although the speed was not very fast, it was much faster than walking. This paper crane was very valuable. It was worth at least more than 200 low-grade spar in the market square. Yang Chun bought it with a pile of talismans and talisman treasures. The seller gave him a 20% discount, which was very cost-effective. Yang Chen's flight route had been along the foot of Meiqing Mountain, which was also in the direction of human habitation. There was no place that would arouse the slightest suspicion. After flying like this for 2 days, he was about to get out of the sphere of influence of Meiqing Mountain. Yang Chen then put away the paper crane, went into the forest, and disappeared without a trace. Shortly after Yang Chen's figure disappeared, 4 or 5 sneaky guys emerged from the place where he put away the paper crane. After looking around, they had to admit that they had lost Yang Chen. What a cunning boy. We carefully planned to take action after getting out of the sphere of influence of Chunyang Palace. I didn't expect this guy to be so careful and put away the paper crane. A middle-aged, long-bearded scholar looked around, turned his head, and said, "Didn't you say that you could find the whereabouts of the paper crane? Where's he?" I specially put a tracking formation on the paper crane. Even if he put in the Chinkoan bag, I can find it. A black-clothed and vulture-like guy behind him said in a cold voice, "I lost more than 50 spar, so he bought it cheaply. Don't worry, he can't run away." With that, the black-clothed man reached out and took out a formation plate and began to launch the formation on it. On that compass-like formation plate, the needle in the center spun wildly, but it didn't stop. "What's the matter?" The long-bearded scholar also saw the abnormality of the formation plate and asked hurriedly, "How is it possible?" The black-clothed man was also shocked. There could only be 2 situations in this situation. One was that Yang Chen was there, and the other was that he had completely lost track of his whereabouts. But obviously, no matter which situation it was impossible. It was impossible for Yang Chen to hide in front of 5 casual cultivators at the 7th level of Lianqi realm without being detected by them. Several people had already scanned this place with their divine sense several times, and it was impossible for there to be a shadow. Unless Yang Chen had made a prompt decision to completely crush the paper crane, even if it was broken, the black-clothed man's tracking formation could still find him. But the situation at present made several people begin to be suspicious. The long-bearded scholar, who was the leader, looked around and decisively ordered, "Everyone disperse. He is just a disciple at the 1st level of Lianqi realm, and he has no ability to fly. Everyone disperse for 100 miles, and then slowly search and meet up. I don't believe that he can escape 100 miles in a short time." The other 4 people agreed and quickly dispersed. This time, several people took over this business. If it was successful, at least each of them could get a low-grade magic weapon. This was a good opportunity that could only be encountered by chance. No one wanted to let it go, so everyone worked hard. If it weren't for the fact that they didn't dare to act rashly within the sphere of influence of Chunyang Palace, they would have already made Yang Chen suffer. The long-bearded scholar's cultivation was the highest, and he was also the leader of several people. He opened his divine sense and scanned around crazily. After finding nothing, he began to search around carefully in doubt. Yang Chen didn't go far, but he was now in a formation. The paper crane had already been sent into the merit ring by him. It was simply impossible for the other party to find the whereabouts of the paper crane through the merit ring. Seeing those people disperse, Yang Chen sneered and ignored them. He turned around directly. After calculating with his fingers, he chose a direction and began to walk in a strange pace. After a while, he completely disappeared in the formation. Yang Chen, who was in the middle of the formation, almost took a few steps and calculated a few times. After spending almost an hour, Yang Chen stood on a huge open space. On one side of the open space was a high cliff. Under the cliff, there was a conspicuous hole. It was dark, and no one knew what was inside. Chapter 68. Fortunately, it's still here. Yang Chen looked at the dark entrance of the cave, and his face finally showed a smile. This cave, or to be exact, this Immortal's cave was left by an ancestor of Chunyang Palace. In theory, this Immortal's cave should be discovered after 60 years, including the huge illusion outside. This was the outermost foot of Meiqing Mountain. Everyone thought that this was a place with a lack of spiritual power, but they did not know how the predecessor found an underground spiritual vein here. He built such a simple Immortal's cave to break through the Jidan stage and condense the Yuanying stage. but he failed miserably. The Immortal's cave had been blocked by a large formation, and there was no leakage of spiritual power, and no one found it in this remote place. In later generations, it should be a disciple of Chunyang Palace who fell into the illusion after being seriously injured. He happened to be proficient in formations. Relying on the experience of his master, he walked into the center of the illusion and found this Immortal's cave. However, in this life, Yangchun was lucky. The spiritual power was blocked by the large formation and could not be leaked. Yangchun felt the majestic spiritual power as soon as he came in. This huge spiritual power also provided endless spiritual power to the illusion, causing the illusion to become stronger and stronger without being noticed. From the merit ring, Yangchun took out the bottle that controlled the medicine garden of Xianyang Mountain. The blue water stain at the bottom of the bottle was now only a line, and it looked like it would dry up soon. When it came into contact with this rich spiritual power, the bottle shone brightly and produced a suction force out of thin air, gathering the surrounding spiritual power crazily. The blue water stain at the bottom of the bottle. Yangchun knew that it was the spiritual power absorbed and stored by the bottle, which was used to maintain the spiritual power of the medicine garden. Although it was very important for the growth of medicinal materials to have sufficient spiritual power, it could not be too abundant, or it would be directly drowned by spiritual power. The bottle had such a magical function, absorbing and storing the surrounding spiritual power, and then slowly releasing it to the medicine garden. Originally, the spiritual power at the bottom of the bottle was estimated to be able to support the needs of the medicine garden for a few years. Yangchun originally planned to add spiritual power to the bottle when he came out to practice a few years later. Now he had this opportunity. He could not only avoid the search of several killers outside, but he could also collect the relics of the predecessor in the cave house, and he could also supplement the spiritual power of the bottle, killing 3 birds with 1 stone. Yangchun didn't need to collect the spiritual power himself. He just needed to put the purified bottle outside. Yangchun tied the purified bottle to his waist and strode into the hole. The cave was not deep. After the senior found the underground spiritual vein, he did not put in any effort to decorate it. After hastily setting up an illusory formation to deceive people, he directly went into closed-door cultivation. Therefore, when Yangchun came in, what he saw was a simple cave. At the top of the cave, there was a luminous pearl that flickered with a faint yellow light. With this light, Yangchun could clearly see everything in the cave. After entering a few feet from the entrance of the cave, there was an enlarged cave, about a few feet in radius. On the ground in the center, there was a black futon. On the futon, a middle-aged man dressed in the costume of Chunyang Palace was sitting. His eyes were closed, and he was motionless. There was no trace of vitality around, and he had been dead for many years. Disciple Yangchun of a younger generation greets the senior. Yangchun didn't dare to neglect and bowed to the corpse on the futon. This was the predecessor of Chunyang Palace. In any case, Yangchun was also a junior, so it was necessary to salute. After bowing and getting up, Yangchun took a few steps forward and used the earth's spiritual power to dig a square pit in the center of the cave. Later, he took out a few giant woods from the Chinquin bag, which were all things that had been prepared in the marketplace. The wood's spiritual power was condensed like a knife, cutting the giant wood, and soon a solid coffin was made. After doing all this, Yangchun carefully moved the corpse of the predecessor from the futon and put it into the coffin. After carefully taking the Chinquin bag from the waist of the predecessor's corpse, he closed the coffin lid. After bowing a few more times, the coffin was sent into the newly dug pit to be buried. In the center of the cave, Yangchun piled up a grave and took out a piece of top-grade, celestial bluestone from the Chinquin bag. He moved his fingers like a knife and engraved the name of the predecessor according to his memory. The signature was that disciple Yangchun bowed and stood in front of the grave. After doing all this, he bowed a few more times and then began to check carefully. In fact, the things in the cave were clear at a glance. The black futon in the center, a sheathed long sword hanging in the deepest part of the cave, and a wooden table on both sides. In addition, there was nothing else. However, Yang Chen knew that what he saw in front of him, except for the two wooden tables, everything else he saw was not simple. The black futon itself was a whole piece of black jade, carved into the shape of a futon. The location where it was placed was just the exit of the underground spiritual vein. The black jade was warm all year round. Not only could it condense spiritual power, but it could also prevent the damage to the meridians caused by the spiritual power being too strong. When meditating, it could also play a role in stabilizing the mind. It was a cultivation treasure that cultivators below the Yuanying stage dreamed of. Now, the black jade praying mat had fulfilled Yang Chen's wish. For the relics of the predecessor, Yang Chen did not feel guilty for taking it. Immortal cultivators pay attention to fate. Since Yang Chen came in, that thing was left for Yang Chen. When the black jade futon was taken away, a spiritual power that was much richer than the spiritual energy in the air surged out. It was originally suppressed by the black jade futon, but now it gushed out directly. However, Yang Chen was not in a hurry. He directly put the bottle at the exit of the spiritual vein, and the spiritual power that gushed out was directly absorbed by the bottle. Then, Yang Chen took a few steps forward and came to the sheathed, long sword hanging on the wall. However, Yang Chen just looked at it and did not take it off. In his mind, he recalled the memory of this sword, and he seemed to be a little embarrassed. This sheathed long sword, in fact, was not a sword, but a sword case, a good thing that could be used as a flying sword, and at the same time, it could be used as an artifact to hold a flying sword. However, for Yang Chen, there was no specific method to collect it. If he forcibly collected this sword case by relying on his cultivation base, it would definitely be a situation of 9 deaths and 1 life. In his previous life, the Chunyang Palace even paid the price of a Jiadan stage master for this. After a while, Yang Chen let out a long sigh and had to temporarily give up the plan to collect this sword. Although the thing was good, his own life was more important. He had already obtained the black jade futon, and he should be satisfied. Moreover, even according to the development of his previous life, there were still decades of peace here, and it would not be too late to collect it later. After putting down this greed, Yang Chen simply sat on the black jade futon, opened the chinquin bag left by the predecessor, and began to slowly sort out the things inside. Chapter 69. The predecessor in Chunyang Palace was originally a Jiadan stage master. He had reached the peak of Jiadan stage, but he had been unable to break through to the Yuanying stage. In the end, his lifespan was exhausted, and he had to stay in this underground spiritual vein. There was almost no elixir in the chinquin bag. This was understandable. Since it was a life-and-death retreat, of course, it was necessary to use all the things that could strengthen the cultivation or help to improve the realm. It was normal to use up all the elixirs. The predecessor was a sword cultivator. All his cultivation was in that sword case, which was the sheathed long sword hanging on the wall outside. In the chinquin bag, there were a lot of refining materials such as cold iron and gold. Unfortunately, looking at these good things, Yang Chen could only look at them and sigh. With his current realm, he could not use them at all. What interested Yang Chen were a few pieces of jade slips in the chinquin bag. He picked them up and began to check them one by one. Yang Chen did not consider the sword technique for the time being. No matter how powerful the sword technique was, it was estimated that it was unlikely to be as powerful as the ones passed down by those guys in the heavenly court. Yang Chen only scanned this piece with his divine sense once and remembered it in his heart. He let it go for the time being and picked up another piece. Refining, to be exact, refining the sword. Almost all of these in the chinquin bag were prepared for the next step of refining the sword case. After Yang Chen read it, he did the same thing. The consecutive pieces of jade slips were all related to cultivation. One of them was even the personal experience of the predecessor from the beginning of cultivation to entering the Jiadan stage, which was very rare. In this piece, Yang Chen also looked at it the most carefully. He almost used all the experience of the predecessor before letting it go. The last piece of jade slip gave Yang Chen a surprise. That was the most important part of his cultivation method, the method to cultivate and collect the sword case. After reading it carefully word by word, Yang Chen's face finally showed a smile. Before, he was still worried that he could not collect the sword case for the time being, but now there was no such problem at all. The spiritual energy in the underground spiritual vein was sufficient. The purified bottle had now absorbed a lot, and the trace of aqua blue color had become a lot stronger, but it was still far from absorbing all the underground spiritual veins. He could use this time to practice the method of collecting the sword case. Collecting the scabbard required a huge amount of spiritual energy. If it was Yang Chen's Qi Training Layer 1, it would be impossible. However, now that he had this collection method, it wouldn't be much of a problem. Just in case, Yang Chen still took out the profound spirit furnace and began to refine a simple Qi replenishing pill. This kind of pill was very easy to make. As long as one had the strength of a second-layer Qi practitioner, they could make it. Yang Chen now has the profound spirit furnace, plus his superb fire control ability, is not a problem at all. Previously, Yang Chen would eat 1,000-year-old mysterious yang fruit every day, and the remaining peel would be stored in his merit ring. This could be used to refine the Qi nourishing pill. The medicinal power of the mysterious yang fruit was too strong. Although the effect of supplementing spiritual energy was excellent, Yang Chen needed to use the positive and negative yin-yang 5 elements secret art to adjust and suppress it. It was not as smooth and direct as the Qi nourishing pill. Yang Chen was slowly preparing for the alchemy here, and the 5 guys who were searching for Yang Chen outside were anxious like ants on a hot pot. The long-bearded scholar could conclude that Yang Chen did not leave this area. He had arranged companions to monitor the road ahead, and he did not find Yang Chen's figure at all. That Yang Chen could only hide in this area. If we let Chunyang Palace find out that we're chasing their palace disciples on the edge of Meiqing Mountain, none of us can escape. The long-bearded scholar was anxious, but there was no tension on his face. He just communicated with a few people with his spiritual awareness and passed these words out. In fact, there was no need for him to specifically emphasize it. Several people also knew the seriousness of the matter. Everyone was looking in all directions and listening in all directions for fear of missing any place. But Yang Chen was like a clay ox entering the sea, disappearing without a trace under everyone's eyes. The guy who claimed to be able to track Jihe was even complaining a lot about this. During the alchemy, Yang Chen sat directly on the black jade futon, and the jade futon was placed on the exit of the spiritual vein, just pressing the pure bottle. Although a part of the spiritual power had been extracted by the pure bottle first, the rest for Yang Chen was just enough for him to replenish. This underground spiritual vein could support a Jidan stage master to die, and naturally, it could provide all the spiritual power that Yang Chen needed to collect the sword case. Alchemy was just in case. After all, Yang Chen's current realm was very low. Even if he could improve his spiritual power level through the mutual generation of the 5 elements, compared with the Jidan stage master, it was simply the difference between a drop of water and the sea. Under the flame of Yang Chen, the skin of the 1,000-year-old profound yang fruit slowly melted and turned into a medicinal liquid. Qi-nourishing pill was different from Qi-seeking pill. Qi-seeking pill relied on Yang Chen to simulate the sense of Qi with his own flame. Qi-nourishing pill only needed to purify the spiritual power in the medicinal materials into pills, and it could be done with one hand. With a profound yang fruit every day, Yang Chen saved a lot of profound yang fruit skin. A piece of skin could refine at least 10 Qi-nourishing pills. Even if Yang Chen could refine 200 Qi-nourishing pills in one furnace, it still took Yang Chen 2 days and 2 nights to turn all these skins into Qi-nourishing pills. When all the profound yang fruit skin was used up, Yang Chen had more than 2,000 Qi-nourishing pills in his hands. This number, coupled with the support of the underground spiritual vein, could definitely allow Yang Chen to collect the sword sheath. However, when Yang Chen put away the profound spirit furnace, he was still surprised to find that it seemed that the profound spirit furnace seemed to have a little change, and it became more full of medicinal qi. It seemed that often refining some medicinal pills with a lot of spiritual energy was also a small tempering for the profound spirit furnace. The more medicinal pills refined by the alchemy furnace, the better the effect. In his previous life, this sword sheath belonged to the Bright Moon Palace master of Chunyang Palace. After the sword sheath was refined by several Yuanying stage masters of Chunyang Palace, he made a big name for himself. Unfortunately, he finally betrayed Yang Chen's master. In this life, it was impossible for Yang Chen to leave the sword sheath to him and help the tyrant. After practicing the technique hundreds of times to ensure that he would not make mistakes when collecting it, Yang Chen began to make the final preparations. The speed of collecting spiritual power in the bottle could be controlled by Yang Chen and slowed down a little, so that Yang Chen's spiritual power replenishment through the black jade futon was twice as fast. All the qi-nourishing pills were placed in a chinquin bag on his hand. There was nothing else in this chinquin bag except for the qi-nourishing pills. After making all the preparations and adjusting his state to the best, Yang Chen finally sat on the black jade futon and began a practice. Chapter 70. The first thing that Yang Chen did was to launch the Yin and Yang 5-element secret art and put his own spirit power to the maximum. The spirit power of the underground spiritual vein was constantly replenishing Yang Chen's meridians. The gentle spirit power made Yang Chen not worry about having too much spirit power and having the idea of suppression. When the spirit power was mobilized to the maximum, Yang Chen launched the secret art to the sword case a few steps away from him. The sheathed sword hanging on the wall seemed to be attracted by Yang Chen and slowly flew away from the wall and floated to a place more than 10 feet away from Yang Chen, suspended in the air, and began to rotate slowly. All of this seemed easy, but Yang Chen did not dare to relax. The correct secret art was the only hope that Yang Chen could successfully collect it. Yang Chen even suspected that since he could find the jade slip that recorded the secret art in the chinquin bag of his predecessor, how could the first Jidan stage master in his previous life not find it? Perhaps when he saw the sword case, he subconsciously started to collect it and was killed by the backlash. However, Yang Chen would never make that mistake in this life. The secret art was very complicated. There were at least 200 continuous movements, and he could not make a mistake. With every movement, there would be a spirit power injected into the sword case, and at the same time, Yang Chen's spiritual awareness would also be injected into it, slowly replacing the original spiritual awareness. Yang Chen's current realm was low, so he could only use this kind of slow work like boiling a frog in warm water to slowly wear down the spiritual awareness of the predecessor on the original sword case, and then put his own spiritual awareness imprint on it, making this magic weapon his own. Every time he injected the spirit power into the sword case, it almost consumed all of Yang Chen's energy. If it weren't for the continuous replenishment of the underground spiritual vein, and Yang Chen swallowed a qi replenishing pill almost every time he shot out a spirit power, maybe Yang Chen could only hold on for a dozen times and would be consumed by the sword case due to the lack of spirit power. Every time spiritual energy entered the scabbard, it would flash once. Every time, Yang Chen would contain all 10 kinds of spiritual power, and every time, the sword sheath would flash a 5-colored light. In the small cave, a colorless light began to flicker incessantly, as if the sword box had become a glowing object. Yang Chen's movements were neither too fast nor too slow, maintaining a fixed speed. The interval in between was just enough for him to recover all his spiritual power, and then he could use it again. Under Yang Chen's precise control, this had become a constant cycle. The yin-yang 5-elemental art was unprecedentedly efficient. It was as if the spiritual power would be completely replenished in every breath, and then in the next breath, all the spiritual power would pour out again. The meridians of the whole body, under such circumstances, completed the changes of waxing and waning, and at the same time, slowly tempered the meridians themselves. Blessed by the heavens, there are not only sufficient spiritual veins, but also enough qi replenishing pills, and at the same time, there's also the crazy yin-yang 5-elemental art. When Yang Chen finally consumed close to 1,000 qi replenishing pills, the spiritual power in his body was fully replenished and exhausted 1,000 times, the meridians of the whole body shook and suddenly expanded. His body seemed to have opened a lock, and the original spiritual power restriction disappeared in an instant. Yang Chen's heart moved, and he directly controlled the purified bottle underground, slightly slowing down the absorption speed so that the black jade futon could get more spiritual power to replenish. The experience of his previous life told Yang Chen that this was a sign of entering the second level of qi training. The advancement of the realm was not simply the improvement of spiritual power, but also the upper limit of the spiritual power that the meridians of the body could hold, as well as their own understanding of the various laws. Yang Chen had no problem with the latter, but the limit of the body, even if Yang Chen's body had been tempered by the flesh and blood of countless immortals, he could only break through step by step. After entering the realm of the second level of qi training, not only did the yin-yang 5 elemental arts circulate faster, but the speed of replenishing spiritual power and the upper limit of the spiritual power of the whole body also increased crazily. In addition to timely adjusting the spiritual power provided by the underground spiritual veins, Yang Chen also added more spiritual power to the collection method. The effect seemed to be very obvious. The light emitted by the sword sheath became brighter and brighter, and the speed of the rotation began to slowly slow down. At the same time, the distance between it and Yang Chen was slowly shrinking. Finally, after consuming more than 1,000 qi replenishing pills, the sheathed long sword quietly stopped in Yang Chen's hand. All the light, after a violent flash, completely disappeared. And in Yang Chen's spiritual sense, there was also a feeling of flesh and blood, as if he could completely control the sheathed long sword in front of him. After stopping all the movements, he replenished his spiritual power, stood up with a happy face, and slowly stroked the scabbard with his hands as if he was touching his lover. With the sword sheath in hand, Yang Chen found that this sword sheath had many magical uses. This sword sheath itself was not only a flying sword, but also a container which could hold thousands of flying swords. The shape of the sword sheath could also change according to the owner's mind. The original owner liked the appearance of the sheathed long sword, so now it was the appearance of the sheathed long sword. But what Yang Chen liked now was obviously not like this. Under Yang Chen's gentle touch, the appearance of the sheathed long sword began to slowly change. Soon, it became the appearance of the peerless fierce blade that Yang Chen used on the beheading Immortal platform. Very skillfully waving the beheading Immortal blade, Yang Chen showed a happy smile on his face. This sword sheath was not just a simple flying sword and sword sheath. The most important thing was that it could integrate the power of the flying sword in the sword sheath as the sword soul and turn it into its own attack power. The sword soul could be one or more, but it must be fully controlled by Yang Chen. Even the sword sheath itself could refine several sword formations when it was refining. When it launched an attack, it was directly the power of the sword formation composed of the sword soul. Now in the sword sheath, there were at least a dozen flying swords with various attributes, but the quality was very general. Refining the flying sword magic weapon was not so easy. Even the previous Jidon stage master could not have such a big deal and put hundreds of flying swords in it. But for Yang Chen, it was not a problem at all. When he killed the immortals, many people said that they left flying sword magic weapons in the mortal world. As long as he found them one by one, he could fill them all into the sword sheath. However, the sword soul was not easy to find. With Yang Chen's current knowledge, since he had obtained this unique sword sheath, of course, it was impossible to find a few flying swords casually. At least, Yang Chen's sword soul must be the best of the best. Of course, it was too early to consider this. Yang Chen stroked the sword sheath in the shape of a ghost head blade, but in his heart, he wanted to sharpen the edge of this beheading immortal blade first. The best way to sharpen the immortal beheading blade of the heavenly quartz executioner was to cut off people's heads. Chapter 71. The 5 killers outside were still searching anxiously. It was impossible for a junior at the first level of qi refining to disappear without a trace all of a sudden. It was not that there was no good thing in this world that could cover up the breath of the whole body, but it was by no means something that a little guy at the first level of qi refining could use. Yang Chun was still waiting for a suitable opportunity. At least, he had to wait until these people couldn't find him and were impatient. The gap between the two sides was too big, whether it was the number of people or the realm. If it was a head-on confrontation, Yang Chun was definitely not their opponent. He had just entered the second level of qi refining, and he also got such a good sword case. Yang Chun was really happy in his heart. What made him most happy was that he intercepted a powerful magic weapon from the master of Bright Moon Palace, who betrayed his master in advance, so that he would not have the capital to be so arrogant in the future. In addition, Yang Chun did not intend to leave this underground spiritual vein. He needed to wait for the purified bottle to completely absorb the spiritual power. First, the growth of medicinal materials in the purified bottle medicine garden required a lot of spiritual power. Second, it was because of the factional disputes. This place was located at the edge of Meiqing Mountain, and it was also the place where Chunyang Palace's control was the weakest. Not far ahead was the sphere of influence of another sect. There was no lack of disputes caused by robbing resources in the cultivation world. Even in Yang Chen's previous life, after Chunyang Palace collected the magic weapon, they still had to negotiate with the neighboring sect and left the underground spiritual vein to the other party. Since this cave was now temporarily owned by Yang Chen planned to take all the things inside, including this underground spiritual vein. It was better to keep it for himself than to give it to other sections. The purified bottle opened and absorbed the spiritual power crazily. Usually, the purified bottle could suck up the spiritual power within 100 miles. It was absolutely no problem to concentrate it at the exit of the underground spiritual vein. Although Yang Chun was still unable to refine the magic weapon, the universe treasure-raising secret art could be used anytime and anywhere. Moreover, the old lord also said that this universe treasure-raising secret art had no limit on the number of times. In short, the higher the cultivation, the more times it was used, the better the grade of a magic weapon. There was nothing else to do now, so it was just right to use it to raise the treasure. There was still half a year to go before the 20th of July. Yang Chun did not have to rush, so he had plenty of time to waste. Anyway, the Yin and Yang 5-element secret art only needed to be practiced once a day. The rest of the time, in addition to the 3 purity secret art, it was a universe treasure-raising secret art. For a whole month, Yang Chun hid safely in the illusion array of the senior, recuperating and building up his strength. As for the 5 killers outside, they were almost going crazy. There's no trace of this junior anywhere else. He must still be here. The long-bearded scholar had already contacted his distant friends through paper cranes, confirming that Yang Chun had not appeared elsewhere. We can't wait like this any longer, but we can't find him. What should we do? Because the black-clothed man had failed to track down Jihe, he had been thoroughly blamed. Even he didn't know what the problem was, so he could only obediently listen to the long-bearded scholar's instructions. Now that the scholar had said so, he immediately said what he wanted. Find a person in Chunyang Palace and ask him to find a way for us. The long-bearded scholar snorted coldly and finally couldn't bear it anymore. We can't find him, but can they in Chunyang Palace not find him themselves? Which sect doesn't have a tracking array on their Chinquan bag? Ask him to find the person and tell us. What if he goes back on his word about the price? The black-clothed man asked immediately. He still has the nerve to raise the price. He's just a junior at the first level of qi refining. Unless someone gives him something good to protect him, how can he get rid of our tracking? His own information is wrong, and he still dares to argue with us on the price? The long-bearded scholar's face became ferocious. If he dares to say anything more, it's not a big deal for us to break up. We'll expose the fact that he killed his fellow disciples. Let's see who is afraid, us or him. At this time, no one said anything. The person who was responsible for negotiating this deal left quickly and went to find a client in Chunyang Palace. The rest were still carefully searching around. Even if they couldn't find him, they couldn't let Yang Chen escape. The spiritual power of the underground spiritual vein was unscrupulously extracted by the purified bottle, and it was finally exhausted. In the purified bottle, there was no longer a trace of blue water stain at the beginning. It had become a section of almost 4 or 5 centimeters high. This spiritual power was enough for the medicinal materials in the medicine garden to be used for hundreds of years or even longer. Satisfied with the purified bottle, Yang Chun walked out of the cave with a satisfied expression. After thinking about it carefully, he jumped up and directly collapsed the mountain wall above the cave entrance. In a short while, the falling soil and stones sealed the cave entrance tightly, and no shadow of the cave entrance could be seen anymore. He believed that after a few decades, when someone broke into this illusion array, they would only find an empty flat ground. They would never find the tomb of the predecessor in the cave. He believed that the predecessor would never want future generations to constantly disturb his long sleep. Of course, Yang Chun did not have to be afraid that someone would know that he had obtained the legacy of the predecessor. Finally, after taking a look here and seeing that there were no flaws, Yang Chun held the murderous blade in his hand and began to slowly walk out of the illusion array. His luck was really good. When Yang Chun just walked out of the illusion array, he found that there was a guy not far away who was releasing his spiritual awareness to search for himself. Looking at Yang Chun, who suddenly appeared on the spot, the other party seemed to be unable to believe it. He was stunned, and unable to make any movement. This was a great opportunity. Yang Chun's killing intent penetrated his body and went straight to the other party. At the same time, his body rushed over like an arrow. The murderous blade in his hand was waved high and slashed at the other party. Although the murderous blade was Yang Chun's own magic weapon, Yang Chun currently did not have the strength to use the murderous blade flying sword to kill people. Magic weapons could only be used as weapons. Even so, a magic weapon was still a magic weapon. In terms of pure sharpness, it was enough to cut off the head of anyone below the foundation establishment stage. After being stabbed by Yang Chun's killing intent, the originally very surprised enemy fell into a momentary daze. Although it was only for a moment, it was enough for Yang Chun to rush over and swing his blade. With a cracking sound, the other party's 6 young chiefs' head flew up high. Blood fiercely rushed out from the neck. The headless corpse even made a few movements, and then, accompanied by the sound of blood spurting out from the neck, it fell to the ground. Every injustice has its perpetrator, and every debt has its debtor. You and I have no grievances in the past, and there are no grudges between us. If you want to blame someone, blame yourself for accepting the mission to kill me. Yang Chun put the murderous blade behind him and said to the corpse that had fallen to the ground. Then he raised his head and looked in one direction, then turned around and rushed in the direction of the illusion array. Chapter 72. As soon as something happened to the person on this side, the long-bearded scholar, who was searching within 10 miles, immediately noticed the movement here. His figure flashed and immediately disappeared. In the blink of an eye, his figure appeared hundreds of feet away. In just a few flashes, he appeared next to the corpse of his companion. The scholar came over very quickly, but the other companion was faster than him. After Yang Chun killed the person and said those words, he directly turned his head and flew towards the location of the illusion formation without looking back. His figure disappeared in the blink of an eye. The guy who followed him only saw the disappearing figure of Yang Chun. However, this glance also confirmed the location of Yang Chun's hiding place. The entrance of the illusion formation was originally only less than a foot in radius. The 5 people searched this place and just scanned it with their divine sense. It was impossible to find it. Yang Chun's figure flashed and disappeared. When he saw the assassin's figure, he immediately appeared in that position. When a middle-aged scholar rushed over, he also only saw his companion make a gesture to him and immediately disappear from that place. The long-bearded scholar's cultivation was the highest, and his mind was also the most meticulous. He clearly saw his companion's gesture and knew that he found Yang Chun's figure and went in to kill him. Now the most afraid thing was that he couldn't find Yang Chun's trace. As long as he could find him, he didn't have to worry about killing him. Thinking about it, an experienced 7th layer chi refining killer should be able to kill a 1st layer chi refining junior, right? Seeing that his companion had already chased in, the long-bearded scholar's face suddenly changed. There was still a companion's corpse lying under his feet. How could he be so careless? Since people disappeared as soon as they went there, it must be an illusion formation. Yang Chun could come and go freely in the illusion formation, and he also escaped the intensive search of the 5 people and killed a companion. Then wouldn't the companion who rashly entered the illusion formation be in danger? As if to confirm the scholar's thoughts, he saw a bloody head appear out of thin air as soon as he had this thought. It seemed to have been thrown high up and flew several feet in his direction. With a thud, it landed on the ground and rolled a few times. Its eyes were wide open, and its face was full of shock. This scene sent chills down the long-bearded scholar's spine. Who would have thought that 2 of the assassins, 4 of whom were in the 7th layer and 1 of whom was in the 8th layer, would be killed in the span of a few breaths when they were chasing a 1st layer chi refining outer sect disciple? Although the other party was using the illusion array as a cover, it was still too shocking. The second comrade who was killed still had a 3-yang magic robe on him. It was a practitioner weapon that had been refined by a Foundation establishment expert. Although it was not at the level of a magic treasure, it was already an extremely strong defensive magic robe for those below the Foundation establishment realm. Yet, it could not withstand the opponent's attack in such a short period of time. What kind of weapon did Yang Chen use? Flying sword? Impossible. If a person in the 1st layer of chi training could use a flying sword, then all the chi training cultivators in the world should just bang their heads against the wall and die. Even among the experts of the Foundation establishment stage, how many of them could guarantee that they would definitely have a flying sword? It was a flying sword, not a talisman sword. Aside from the outstanding disciples of the big sects, who would be rewarded with a flying sword by their masters, how heaven-defying would a normal disciple have to be able to obtain a flying sword? Yang Chun must have an extremely powerful weapon in his hands. It could very well be a top-grade practitioner weapon or even a talisman treasure. After a short period of shock, this was the first thought that came to the long-bearded scholar's mind. If he killed Yang Chun, he would be able to get his talisman treasure. When he thought of this, the long-bearded scholar suddenly had a kind of expectation. He even eagerly hoped that Yang Chun would recklessly rush out and rush in front of him. The black-clothed man also appeared here in time, but he was far away and came even later. When he rushed over, he only saw the headless corpse of his companion and the 2 heads on the ground, as well as the long-bearded scholar standing not far from the corpse. Seeing this, the black-clothed man wanted to say something, but in the end he only opened his mouth and no words came out. "Junior, come out. I want to dismember your body into 10,000 pieces." The long-bearded scholar quietly waited for a moment, and after there was no movement, he finally broke out. At the same time, both of his hands flicked, a series of golden lights flashed, and attacked the place where Yang Chun disappeared. There was an illusory array, but it was an illusory array set up by a Jedi master. How could it be shaken by the attack of a trivial chi training disciple? The golden lights shone very brightly, but all the attacks were like clay oxen entering the sea. There was no ripple. The black-clothed man vigilantly rose into the air, slowly approached the top of the illusory array, and looked down from above. He was a smart person. The opponent's strength was low. A disciple of the 1st layer of chi training definitely did not have the ability to fly. And looking at the situation of the 2 heads on the ground, it was obvious that they were killed after someone got close to them. In other words, as long as he was in the air, he was already in an invincible position. When the long-bearded scholar saw the black-clothed man's action, he also understood the key point, and his body also flew up, but he still stayed in the same place, not too close. There was no movement at the illusory array, but neither of them dared to relax their vigilance, both staring at the area as if they were facing a great enemy. In their hands, they had already prepared the strongest attack power of the talisman weapon, waiting for Yang Chun to appear and immediately strike like thunder. Suddenly, The edge of the illusory array flashed, and a figure suddenly appeared. It was Yang Chun. The black-clothed man was overjoyed, and just as he was about to launch an attack, the scene in front of him suddenly changed, and he was in the middle of a round domed hall. The black-clothed man was stunned and immediately realized that he had fallen into a formation. He didn't expect that this Yang Chun actually had a good cultivation in formations, but he didn't think that Yang Chun would have any powerful killing formations other than the illusory array. He took 2 steps forward and only heard a series of whooshing sounds above his head. Before he could react, the 49 flying swords had already dismembered his body. Looking at the protective formation of the Xianyang Mountain Herb Garden enveloping the black-clothed man, Yang Chun felt it was a pity. The long-bearded scholar was too far away, and there was no way to get him in. When the long-bearded scholar saw Yang Chun's figure appear, he was about to say something, but then he heard a series of crashing sounds, and pieces of flesh and blood fell from the sky. Pale with fright, the long-bearded scholar was about to escape, but he found that Yang Chun was just standing in the same place, motionless. The scholar instantly understood the key point. Yang Chun must have used some kind of secret technique to kill a 7th-layer Qi training stage cultivator, and he must have paid a price. While he was thinking, Yang Chun spat out a mouthful of blood, and now was the best time to kill Yang Chun. What else do you have to say now? The long-bearded scholar almost grinned. I will give you a chance to speak. Really? Yang Chun suddenly grinned, and he didn't even bother to wipe the blood on his lips. Then I will speak. Speak, I am all ears. The long-bearded scholar slowly approached and sneered again and again. Every injustice has its perpetrator. Every debt has its debtor. Chapter 73. Just as he said Yang Chun's catchphrase, the long-bearded scholar's side suddenly exploded with at least 100 pyroblast talismans. The explosion caused by a single pyroblast talisman might not be able to injure the scholar, but the sudden explosion of hundreds of pyroblast talismans, especially those that had been strengthened by the universe treasure-raising art, was naturally different. When he killed the first guy, Yang Chun knew that these guys would definitely be lingering around the corpse, so he quickly inserted hundreds of talismans into the surrounding ground. Under the influence of his divine sense, they would immediately explode. Just now, he had forcibly used his whole body's spiritual power to barely move out the medicine garden's protective formation. He hadn't even used it yet, but it had already injured Yang Chun. But the other side unexpectedly miscalculated and gave Yang Chun time to speak, so that Yang Chun didn't have to escape back into the maze. A qi-nourishing pill that had already been in his mouth was promptly swallowed, and then he frantically activated the pyroblast talismans that had already been laid out. In addition to the pyroblast talismans, there were also dozens of 15-ton talismans and dozens of giant wood talismans. Wood feeds fire, and the power of the pyroblast talismans increased to another level. At the same time, dozens of thick giant wood suddenly appeared in the air and fiercely crashed into the long-bearded scholar. In the blink of an eye, the long-bearded scholar's whole body was buried in a pile of fire and giant wood, and no trace of him could be seen. Yang Chun held the fierce knife in his hand horizontally, and just as he was about to rush forward, he suddenly heard a wild roar. In the midst of the fire and giant wood, a huge, long, hairy claw suddenly appeared. The surrounding flames were forced back by the momentum of this claw, and unexpectedly, a path without fire appeared. However, the fire was stopped, but a few giant wood solidly smashed into the huge claw. Immediately, the owner of the claw let out a loud roar. Then, a shadow like a leopard flew out of the fire and directly pounced on Yang Chun. Yang Chun's knife was already horizontally in front of his chest, and when he saw this, he shouted loudly. He raised the fierce knife in his hand high above his head, and with a simple splitting manhua, he fiercely chopped down at the leopard that was pouncing over. In the blink of an eye, the distance between the man and the beast had shrunk to less than 10 feet. However, Yang Chun's saber momentum was extremely fast. From raising it to chopping down, it took almost no time at all. There was only a bright and beautiful saber light flashing in the air, and nothing else could be seen. One of the leopard's giant claws was about to touch Yang Chen's body, but it seemed to have suddenly lost all its strength. The huge body stopped in the air, and then it turned into two pieces in front of Yang Chen, separated from the left and right, and the incision was as smooth as a mirror. Yang Chen's gaze was no longer on the giant leopard. He stretched out his left hand, and dozens of pyroblast talismans and giant wood talismans were detonated in his hand. He attacked the place that was still covered by the flames. Boom, boom, boom. Amidst the violent explosions and collisions, a leisurely voice suddenly sounded. "Good saber. I want it." Then, the long-bearded scholar's figure suddenly appeared outside the flames. He didn't look the slightest bit embarrassed, and he still had that elegant appearance. Hearing this voice and seeing the figure, Yang Chen's body shook fiercely. It was as if he had become stupid. The fierce knife in his hand flew towards the scholar subconsciously. He actually threw it out of his hand, wanting to use the flying knife to hurt someone. Yang Chen's embarrassed appearance fell into the long-bearded scholar's eyes. He smiled slightly, and Yang Chen's knife flew in front of him. The long-bearded scholar just stretched out his hand very elegantly, and the fierce knife was in his hand. As soon as it was in his hand, the long-bearded scholar immediately felt that the fierce knife was different. He suddenly shouted, "Magic treasure?" His voice was full of surprise, as if he had suddenly won a huge prize of hundreds of millions. Before, he had always coveted the weapon in Yang Chen's hand that could easily kill his three companions. He even suspected that it was a treasure talisman. After seeing Yang Chen kill his spirit pet with his own eyes, he confirmed that the fierce knife in Yang Chen's hand was the treasure talisman he had always wanted. So, he didn't think about it and reached out to take it. He didn't expect that the knife was actually a magic treasure. Once he thought that a magic treasure would immediately become his, the long-bearded scholar was so happy that he almost fainted. A Chi training level 1 guy didn't know what was good, but that didn't mean he didn't know what was good. However, as soon as he discovered that it was a magic treasure, the knife in his hand suddenly released a fierce sword intent, as if it was going to bite him. Magic treasure. Immediately after, his voice changed. He still shouted the same thing, but the meaning behind it was completely different. This time, his voice was full of fear and shock. If it was a normal magic treasure, the flying sword, with his Chi training level 8 cultivation, he might have been able to take it. If a Chi training level 1 guy could hold it unscathed, then it must be a magic treasure that hadn't been refined. This kind of magic treasure, he was confident that he could hold it in his hand. However, he didn't expect that this magic treasure was actually so tyrannical. As soon as the long-bearded scholar felt something was wrong, he immediately wanted to shake off the fierce knife in his hand, but it was already too late. The surging sword intent directly rushed into his body, straight to the center of his divine sense. Chi, the scholar's body was like a hedgehog. Innumerable sharp shadows appeared crazily. In a flash, the scholar's body was full of holes, turning him into a big ladle. Then his whole body seemed to have no bones, softly paralyzed like a puddle of mud. If you really have the cultivation of a gold core master, then I'll admit it. Yang Chen slowly walked forward, bent down to pick up the fierce knife that was inserted in the ground, put it into the merit ring, and shook his head at the meat paste on the ground. Unfortunately, you don't have it. From the beginning, Yang Chen didn't plan to rely on his own talisman to repel the enemy. The talisman made by the Chi training level 1, even if it was strengthened by the heaven and earth treasure raising secret art. Using hundreds of them, it was impossible to cause any harm to the Chi training level 8 experts. So many talisman exploded, all to cover this last blow of the flying knife. Yang Chen was stunned. Throwing the knife to hurt people was already planned. His trump card was this murderous saber. In his previous life, this magic treasure caused Chunyang Palace to lose a gold core master. He didn't know how to refine it. With the long-bearded scholar's cultivation level of the Chi training level 8, forcibly taking the fierce knife, other than death, there was no other possibility. There should be another enemy, but with Yang Chen's divine sense, he actually couldn't find the other party's whereabouts. Moreover, the battle was so fierce. The momentum of the flame explosion talisman was so great. but the other party unexpectedly didn't appear. Presumably he was not here. Yang Chun no longer cared about anything else, began to slowly collect his spoils of war. Except for the long-bearded scholar, the others did not leave a complete corpse. To the enemy, Yang Chun naturally had no need to be polite. The 4 intact Chinquin bags naturally became Yang Chun's personal belongings. Chapter 74. 3/7 layer Qi condensation and 1/8 layer Qi condensation expert were pursuing him. No matter how good-natured Yang Chun was, he couldn't help but be enraged. This matter was definitely Sun Haijing and Chu Heng's idea. Otherwise, Sun Haijing wouldn't have said those words before Yang Chun left. But with Sun Haijing's wealth, he probably wouldn't be able to hire these experts. This matter wasn't over yet. In his previous life, Yang Chun had been pursued before, but it wasn't when he was at this realm. The pursuit not long ago had made him feel the feeling of a stray dog from his previous life. Because fellow disciples couldn't kill each other, Yang Chun hadn't acted against Sun Haijing in Nine Earth Villa. Yet, the other party was so relentless. It seemed that after he returned, he would definitely kill Sun Haijing on the day of the sect competition to vent the hatred in his heart. Continuously being pursued without retaliating was definitely not the attitude Yang Chun intended to adopt in this life. To be able to hire a 7th or 8th layer Qi condensation expert, ordinary spirit stones were impossible, unless there was a talisman treasure suitable for them, or perhaps a talisman treasure tailor-made. What Yang Chun needed to do now was to find these things in the Chinquin pouches left behind by these people. Perhaps he could find traces of Chu Heng's methods from these things. Even if he couldn't find them, Yang Chun still had to spread the news. As a cultivation imparting disciple, Chu Heng had always been at odds with Yang Chun. This was an open secret between Nine Earth Villa and Ishio Villa. The rumors would cause him to be badly battered for a period of time. Instead, hire assassins to kill? Yang Chun hadn't thought about it. Since he'd started over, and even the Jade Emperor had become a ghost under his blade, no matter what kind of enemy Yang Chun wanted to kill with his own hands, just like these people he'd just killed, Yang Chun tossed the corpses of these people into the maze. In such a short amount of time, he didn't have to worry about anyone discovering them. If things continued as they were, it would be decades before these corpses were discovered. Under the cover of the maze, it took Yang Chun almost 10 days to recover from the physical backlash caused by using the Medicine Garden's protection array. Fortunately, the purification bottle absorbed enough spiritual power this time. Fortunately, Yang Chun's spiritual power was not destroyed. But even so, with Yang Chun's spiritual awareness in the middle stage of the foundation stage, his spiritual awareness was still injured due to forcibly stimulating the array. Fortunately, Yang Chun had already collected the Medicine Garden. Even if he suffered a backlash, it would not be fatal. He just lost a part of his spiritual awareness. The 3 Purity Secret Art was amazing. In just a few days, Yang Chun's spiritual awareness was repaired. When he reappeared, he was in the Chinquin Pavilion in Chinquin Mountain. This was the shop of the Pure Yang Palace. Yang Chun walked in, and others saw the Pure Yang Palace mark on the Chinquin bag on his waist. No one stopped him and let him go to the lobby. Dong! A cotton bag was thrown heavily on the table by Yang Chun. The frost on his face made Yang Chun look a little fierce. He deliberately exuded a little murderous aura, which made Yang Chun look aggressive. If he was not obviously a disciple of Chunyang Palace, maybe someone would have thrown him out. Junior brother Yang, what is this? A fat shopkeeper appeared quietly in front of Yang Chun. Since he was one of them, of course, the shopkeeper had to come out to receive him. The shopkeeper was also in the 6th layer of Qi refining, but he used to be a servant. After reaching the 5th layer of Qi refining, he could choose to go out and take charge of the business for the sect. He had always been very respectful to these disciples who were allowed to go out to gain experience in Chunyang Palace. Yang Chun had been here last time. As the shopkeeper, he naturally recognized it. I was chased by several people. This is their head. Yang Chun directly opened the cloth bag, revealing 3.5 heads and several rune weapons that looked good at first glance. The reason why there were 3.5 heads was that the guy who was minced by the sword formation could not find whole head. Only half of it was found, but the identity could still be vaguely seen from the remaining half-head. These things were found from them. It is very similar to the method of Chunyang Palace. Yang Chun sneered. When did the people in Chunyang Palace collude with outsiders to kill the disciples of our sect? The shopkeeper was shocked when he heard this. Yang Chun was ambushed by a killer before he entered Jurong Mountain Villa. This incident directly caused almost all the individual cultivators around Meiqing Mountain to be interrogated. The last incident was just yesterday. Today, Yang Chun was chased again, and the disciples of Chunyang Palace were involved. For the shopkeeper, this was simply a bolt from the blue. The shopkeeper identified the heads of several people and immediately recognized them. They were several famous individual cultivators. They formed a group and often appeared in the marketplace. However, their cultivation was very good. Yang Chun was only a disciple at the first hurdle of Lianqi realm, but he actually killed the other party. This made the shopkeeper shocked, but he also admired Yang Chun. There should be one more of these guys. Go find his whereabouts. Maybe we can know who did it. Yang Chun reminded him. Then he got up and left. I still have a task. Senior brother, please deal with this matter. I don't want every disciple of Chunyang Palace to be chased before they leave Meiqing Mountain when they go out to gain experience. Not to mention that Yang Chun left when the news spread back to Chunyang Palace. Everyone was furious. The disciples of the law enforcement hall came out in full force and once again set off an earth-shaking investigation around Meiqing Mountain. Sun Haijing, who got the news, was in a panic. Finally, he couldn't hold back the fear in his heart. In the name of seeking advice, he came to Chu Hung again. Master, what should we do? If we are found by the law enforcement hall, we will all be finished. Sun Haijing almost cried as he said this. It was a big crime to kill a fellow disciple. Once it was known, the consequences would be unimaginable. Why are you panicking? Chu Hung was also a little scared, but he didn't show up directly after all. He first made a gesture to seal the surroundings, and then asked, Did you give the search array to the guy who is still alive? Yes, master. Sun Haijing was afraid of this. Once the guy who was still alive was found, he would immediately die without a burial place. Don't be afraid. I also left a tracking array on that magic array. Chu Hung stood up and calmly tidied up his clothes. He will not live past tomorrow's sunrise. You go back first. If others ask you, just say that you don't know anything. Yes, master. Sun Haijing was relieved when he heard that Chu Hung had other arrangements. He returned to his small courtyard and immediately began to do closed-door training, ignoring the things outside. When Sun Haijing went far away, Chu Hung flashed out of the door. Looking at the direction where Sun Haijing disappeared, he scolded in his heart. Useless. You can't even do such a small thing, and I have to do it. Humph. If it weren't for the obvious traces of killing you, I would have killed you long ago. After scolding, his figure flashed away.